All right, everybody, welcome into episode 147 here on September 17th, 2024. I'm Nick Hill, as always, from Chattanooga, Tennessee of the United States. And joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, is Gus Tomazeli. And Gus, how are you doing here on this Tuesday evening?
I'm doing good, doing good. Another episode where I'm gonna update a Corinthians game live. They are currently at halftime, quarterfinals of the Copa Sudamericana, the South American version of the Europa League. Corinthians up 1-0 on the road against Fortaleza. Beautiful goal by Igor Coronado. So I'll be keeping up to date. So I guess if Corinthians win again, Corinthians fans are gonna ask for us to keep doing our pod during Corinthians game because Corinthians is not in a good in a good stretch, and the second time in a row they win when they do a pod. At least until now. Let's see what second half reserves down in Castelão Stadium in the city of Fortaleza.
Absolutely. I mean, if we need to, we can be the good luck charm for Corinthians to
Yeah.
help them
Oh,
avoid
yeah.
relegation. Here in America tonight, it's primarily just baseball. We're in the middle of a playoff chase. And really, honestly, what really keeping tabs at the NL East here, Braves had a lead throughout most of the game today, but they are now behind the Cincinnati Reds 6-5 late in the seventh inning. And of course, they're chasing the New York Mets, who right now are up 9-1. So the Braves need to find a way to come back to at least stay just a game behind tonight in that last wild card spot. And we'll talk much more baseball for sure later on in the show. But as we all know, it's football season, and things, folks, are about to get really, really real for our Tennessee Volunteers. But before we get into the big matchup in the Great Plains this week, we got to talk about some news that's off the field. And thankfully, we're not talking about like someone getting arrested or suspended or whatever. This is not Georgia. but it is what we are doing is going to cost a bit of money. At least cost some of the fans a bit of money, because today athletic director Danny White announced that for all tickets purchased, there is going to be a 10% talent fee that will be ticked on to any purchase made through the University of Tennessee. This will be going directly to NIL funds. And safe to say, this is kind of an interesting reactions, because I did watch an interview with Danny White earlier. He went on with, I believe it was Andy Staples of On Free. He did an interview with him kind of explaining why. And he believes that this is the way forward. This is a way to make sure that athletes in the future will continue to get more funds, that Tennessee can stay competitive with high-level recruits. You know, players like Nico Imialava, who reportedly were paying $8 million a year to be at Tennessee, at least, well, the NIL collectives around Tennessee, not necessarily Tennessee collectively. Although, let's be real, it's Tennessee probably organizing it, but you can't really have the school organizing it, but it's a Wild West. There's no rules. There's no NCAA. Who cares? Really, it's Tennessee organizing. I mean, we're basically straight up trying to, buy players via this rule. So, Gus, it's definitely interesting to see a lot of people like thinking about, oh my gosh, we're pricing out the average fan right now. And I'm not gonna lie, I mean, tickets are extremely expensive this year. And at the end of the day, like, it's certainly a byproduct of two big things. One, it's capitalism, right? Tennessee football is in extremely high demand this year because this is the best team potentially that we've seen it in Tennessee in over 20 years. But at the same time as well, you have kind of an archaic model to buy tickets with Ticketmaster and with all the ticket fees, and obviously you can't just go to a gate and buy a ticket anymore. You got to do it online. So the frustration is there because I think a lot of people really want to see this team play. There's a lot of demand for it, and it's going to get harder for the average person to watch to get these games and to go.
I mean, first of all, fans finally are realizing it's a new era in college sports. Because I would have think I'm gonna be honest, I didn't read it through or didn't kind of went deep into the issue, but I would imagine that this talent fee is not going to be only for football. It's going to be for men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, softball, volleyball, you name it. Because again, it's a new era for college athletics. Because players are finally getting paid, rightfully so. But this money has to come from somewhere, and the university budget cannot be solely into players NIL funds. So I would think that's gonna be this. So basically, what I think college athletics, not only at Tennessee but throughout the United States of America, is saying is that okay, you guys want to have good athletes here from sports, yes. So help us getting the money to get those players.
Yeah, but at some point, right? Like you have to kind of give back to the fans. I mean, let's be real. I mean, obviously, part of that is putting a team. Hold on, Gus, your mic's off. Gus, uh, Gus. I don't think Gus can hear me right now. I can see him talking.
So go ahead, go ahead. I was sending an audio message. Sorry.
I was so confused, but anyway, at some point you got to get back to the fans, at least from a financial standpoint, right? Like we've been dealing with a lot of inflation since the end of the pandemic. It's been a tough financially for a lot of folks, and it's a huge ask getting people to come to a game to spend a lot of money, especially if they're bringing a whole family. With concessions and parking and all the additional costs of going to a football game. I feel like, especially when you look at the fact that last year in 2023, Tennessee turned a $75 million profit. They brought in $134.9 million in revenue, only have $59.1 in expenses. I don't feel like this is truly necessary to continue putting Tennessee at the forefront. Now, if you could say down the line, by going ahead and doing this will allow us to pay bigger coach contracts and to pay for more high quality players. I guess I could see that argument, but also, how are we allocating the TV money we're getting? Because remember, the SEC, this is the first year of a brand new TV contract with ESPN that's $400 million. We were just in a contract with CBS for only 55. SEC teams are getting way more money now than they were before. And I feel like, in a way, like, because of the unprecedented success we're having in all sports, right? Like basketball was a few players away from the Final Four. Baseball just won a national title. Football is one win away probably from being back in the top 5 next week. That, they can say, this is that maybe A.D. White and the rest of the administration is like, okay, this is the time to do something like this. And as long as Tennessee goes and beats Oklahoma and then goes to the playoffs, beats Alabama, contends for the SEC title, no one's going to really bat an eye because we're having way too much fun with Nico Iamaleava and the rest of the group. But at the same time, like at some point, the pendulum's going to swing back the other way, and you're going to have a team that's not so great, right? And at that point, when we're paying this 10% talent fee, I feel like people are like, okay, why am I paying 10% extra here versus any other school when we're not getting the results on the field? I feel like that, and then also, you could also see this maybe paying for the entertainment district next to the stadium. Although I was under the assumption that was going to be a tax increment financing district, kind of like what we're seeing here in Chattanooga with the Lookout Stadium. But I don't know. I mean, granted, if Danny White thinks this is the best thing to do, I'm going to trust him because this dude has rebuilt the Tennessee athletic department. It's from an absolute disaster and a dumpster fire to a winner across multiple sports. And you just got to kind of, I kind of just will trust him because things have clearly gotten a lot better for Tennessee athletics and not worse. All right. Jason Warwick has joined us in the chat, by the way. He says that this is going to be the first of many things like this. Getting ahead of it is the best play. Sure, you'll take some heat early, but you'll reap the benefits before
I
everyone else
I agree.
follows through.
I agree because it's not going to be only at the University of Tennessee. A lot of universities throughout the countries are also going to be like, hey, fellow fans that love our university, we need your support. We need your financial support to get more money to compete for players. Because even though, oh, they turned a profit last year, but this year, probably they needed more money for more players. I don't know. I don't have the books. I don't know. I don't, I'm not Danny White. I'm not in in the Tennessee Athletics front office to know that. And shout out also to my really good friend Gustavo Barbudo. Tune in our podcast here in Americana. But I think the bigger discussion is that uh, I feel like if the NCAA would have heard us way back in 2017, 2018, 2019, where I remember vividly, and I think you also remember that, Nick, that we were the first ones to kind of push it for players to be paid, and I argue strongly on our radio station back in Knoxville, WTK Rockstall Sports Show. If they were ahead of the curve and established kind of guidelines and kind of set up the way, maybe things would be more a good transition. Now we're seeing teams kind of figuring out themselves how to adapt into this new reality.
Right, and we're seeing the ones that are not doing it well. Jason, he also added a second comment saying the difference with Tennessee is we're already good. We can already reap the benefits and keep the program loaded with talent. Others will do the same, and the money may or may not lead to results because we're already at a huge advantage doing it early. I think of some of the other SEC schools right now that are struggling. Something like a Florida, because you look at the mess their NIL situation is. I mean, literally, their NIL situation is so bad they got sued. I mean, that's how bad their NIL situation was. I mean, look at Auburn and how mediocre they are right now. I mean, just as an example, just because you have money doesn't mean you are able to successfully build a team. Look at the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, they have as much money as any NFL franchise, and they haven't won a championship in 30 years. Or the Yankees have as much money as anyone, and they haven't won a World Series in 16 years. But if you have the right captain of the ship, you can. And I think seeing the success that Danny White and staff have had here, there's no reason why doing this won't continue to increase that. I just hope at some point the pendulum swings back and we kind of give some back to the fans, right? I mean, as long as we're in this inflationary period, right? Things are going to get more expensive. But at the same time, I understand where he's coming from because in his interview with Andy Staples earlier, he said that there's 15,000 people on a waiting list for Neyland Stadium season tickets who are willing to pay the prices right now, but they just can't. They just don't have the seats, the availability. And that's capitalism, boys and girls. The supply outweighs the demand. And also, Jason says he oversaw the decrease of season ticket donation amounts. That's also true because one of the other big things here is you no longer have to donate to the school to be a season ticket holder, because up until now you've had to constantly donate to the school to keep your line for season tickets. So that's out the window, which really kind of shows that yes, at the end of the day, Tennessee football is a business, and you have to think about Tennessee football differently than the rest of the University of Tennessee, because Tennessee football is its own brand, its own business. And you really have to think about it separately from the other sports on campus.
Yeah, I that's what my point. That's my overall point was, is that you cannot think that Tennessee Athletics are football and basketball solely, as we all saw how baseball, how important they were, especially bringing a national title. And for example, a program that I would have think when they come back to being good and they have the resources and the brand to do so. The Lady Vols basketball team, you know, that's gonna be probably another way to add kind of money. But at the end of the day, I feel like there's gonna be a new trend. I think there's gonna be a new reality for athletic departments and athletic directors to figure out ways to get more money. I think they're gonna have to get creative. I think it's a really new. I think there has never been a more challenging time for a college athletics director and a college athletic and a college coach as of right now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a year-round, 365-day job that you really get no time off. All right, and Jason Wyrick, our our belated third co-host, basically, he surprises us.
Honorary guest, as always.
Absolutely.
What's up, guys? Let me get these headphones in so I can kill my reverb on this sound. But I had a lot of things to say about this, so I figured I'd hop in and crash the podcast as usual.
Anytime. You're a valuable presence.
All right, Jason. Kind of like kind of give your kind of take on this, because you're not just seeing this also at Tennessee, but like think about this also from the potential future at Louisville, for example. And obviously, Louisville is much more geared towards basketball than football. But I mean, football obviously is a top 15 team right now at Louisville, but obviously, Louisville historically, they are as a basketball powerhouse. So let's kind of think about kind of how you see this impacting college sports.
I think it's going to be the new normal. Truly, it's not going to be something that is isolated to Tennessee. Anybody that thinks that, I think, is crazy.
I think secondarily here, I think getting out in front of it is the best play. As I said, I think that regarding what Tennessee is doing, Tennessee is utilizing what advantage it has right now by getting out in front of this and then getting that money pooled together to be able to restock the talent for a staff that has shown they can win with good talent. And so with that said, I think that this is really important for people to understand. Danny White did just oversee the removal of donations for a lot of season tickets. So a lot of people that have season tickets are already in the plus as far as money goes. This is going to impact $5 to $10 maybe per ticket. You got to think most face value tickets in Neyland Stadium are $50 to $100, if not a little bit less. And so this 10% is really not that much money per ticket. And I don't want to hear, oh, this is pricing people out. I don't think that's true. $5 to $10 per ticket per game is not going to price out people. That's an extra $50 to $100 a year. If you have a 10-game season, right? And at Neyland. And so considering you usually have 6 to 7, you're looking at like $70 or so more a season. But when you're already, not having to donate to be able to get your season tickets, you're still massively in the plus. And so I think this is more of a knee-jerk reaction because it looks bad at Tennessee in particular. But again, I think this is going to be the new normal as it relates to schools directly paying players rather than having NIL collectives be the sole benefactors here, which is, again, the way that it's going because of the way that the new NIL rules have been implemented by the NCAA. And so, in the context of Louisville, I think this is going to be something that happens at Louisville as well. But it would not shock me to see this done at basketball games, like you said, because that's where everybody at Louisville wants the money to go to anyway. Very, very few people at Louisville care more about football than basketball. And so with that said, getting out in front of it, again, is in my opinion, massively important. And like I said before, Tennessee is using its advantage to keep the talent level stocked, while other teams in Florida, like South Carolina or any of these other teams that are kind of looking for their ways to claw out of the pits that they've been in, keep struggling.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the talent level and just the enthusiasm between just all the sports being really good. And I mean, you saw the crowd the other night in Neyland Stadium for Kent State. Years ago, that would have passed for an SEC game crowd. In fact, that crowd was better than some SEC games I attended.
Oh, 100%. The three of us have been to SEC games during our times at Tennessee that had worse crowds than that. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just sitting there watching them, blowing my mind at just how like literally all we needed was just a winner to get behind, and this fan base will go to the ends of the earth.
And not only have we found one winner, we've found several. You know, as you were saying, the football team is back. Recent New Year's Six Bowl champion, probably going to make the playoff if things keep going this well. If things keep going the way they're going, there's every chance in the world this team could win a championship in football. Did just win a baseball championship. Was one foul merchant away from going to the Final Four. The women's team just hired an up-and-coming head coach as well, even though Coach Kelly Harper had gotten the team to the Sweet 16. And so that's the way that I'm thinking, you know, okay, this guy, Danny White, is not satisfied with pretty good. He wants to be elite. And money goes into that. But I think for the average fan, they don't understand that the money going into it also pours back into the rest of the university. This football money that you're getting from the TV contract funds all the other sports. So let's not get that twisted. The football team pays for every other sport, plus it pays into the school, plus football interest gets more applications for students from in-state and out of state, which in turn funds the university. You know, people like to talk about trickle-down economics. The real trickle-down economics is in an SEC football team.
Right, and also just the impact of just Knoxville and East Tennessee's economy. I mean, all the extra people coming here,
absolutely,
here to go to games, and you know, heck, even here in Chattanooga, we get extra, you know, people coming through going to Knoxville. So it's all cyclical, right? And because I remember sitting there in 2017 at the end of the Vanderbilt game, we were down by 25. The stadium was empty in the fourth quarter, and we went to Gus's right after, you know, the restaurant Gus's. And we're sitting there, and there's,
by the way, they got to sponsor this podcast.
Great
Gus's
food,
Good Times Deli. We love Gus's.
Yeah,
great
Gus's
food.
Good Time Deli, but it was empty in there, and I'm just like, holy cow! This football
which is criminal. Criminal to not have anybody there after a football game.
If this team doesn't get itself back, I mean, what's going to happen to all these restaurants, these small towns? People don't want to come to these games. But thankfully, things have changed because of Danny White's leadership and his decision to bring Josh Heupel with him from Central Florida. And yeah, it's just those are. So even though when I initially looked at this, I'm like, okay, I don't like that, but you know, after reading more into it, understanding the donation thing, I understand it. And
yeah,
for
you
most
don't have to like it for you to understand, and for you to understand why it's a good idea from the athletic department. Of course, you're not going to like it. Anything that's going to increase a ticket price is going to be met with some backlash. But like I said, this is being more felt by individual game ticket buyers, because the people that donate for their season tickets have already gotten discounted tickets relative to what they were spending. And
exactly. And then they most of us only go to one or two games a year anyway. So it's not like
right. You have your season ticket members who you have to take great care of, because they're the ones that are donating the money to the school. They're the ones that are going ahead and spending the $600 or $800 for their season tickets. Like I said, the normal average seat doesn't cost more than $100 per game face value. And when you're getting them from the school, you got to think, okay, face value. I don't care what Ticketmaster says on resale. You know, people say, oh, well, Tennessee tickets are so expensive. They're $400 and $500. Yeah, on the resale market. If you get in and get them from the source, they're like $60. Next time you get a physical ticket, which I don't even know if they exist anymore, but they have the face value on it, the original selling price, and it's always really, really low. And I think that's the biggest problem is scalpers getting season tickets. That's the biggest concern. They're the price gouging people. This athletic department decision is really not going to be. It's really not going to impact that many people in a very large way, in my view. And that may sound callous, but I may take heat for this, but I think this is a good idea, and it's going to pay dividends immediately for Tennessee. 100% will pay dividends.
Yeah, and the scalper thing, that's not just Tennessee. That's all sports, all concerts.
Of course. And that's the problem.
That's a Ticketmaster problem. So, and I just
scalps. Here in Brazil too, like tickets are getting more expensive. Even here at Rio Branco, the price here is the cheapest ticket is 30 reais, which is I'll put it in terms of monthly minimum wage, which is I'll say, hold on, it's like 2% of a minimum wage. So, I mean, it's not only in America. Tickets throughout the world in concerts and sports are getting more expensive because it's a inflationary effect.
Yeah, and I'm always willing to pay more for college football anyway because we don't get that many of those games. So you only get 7 Saturdays a year in England, and honestly, only like 3 of those are truly like big games. At the end of the day, so
because nobody's paying top dollar to come see the Chattanooga Mocs. Sorry, and we love the Mocs on this.
Flashes.
Look, we love the Mocs on this podcast, but people aren't going to pay top dollar for that. People are going to pay top dollar to host Georgia, host Alabama, host Florida if they ever get good again. And those are going to be the games where you make the most money as a scalper. That's simple supply and demand. The scalpers are the problem here, not Danny White. And I will die on that hill. Danny White has invested money into this program, into this athletic department, and into this school that I think has been worthwhile. And people say, oh, well, what about the pilot sponsorship? They're defacing the field. They're defacing Shield Watkins Field, at Neyland Stadium. No, they're paying for the stadium upgrades. Chill. Oh, we're renaming Thompson Bowling Arena. Okay. They're paying for upgrades. They don't want, they decided, oh, we'll put a sign out front and we'll spray paint the turf or the grass or whatever the surface is at Neyland with a pilot logo so that people don't have to pay a premium on their tickets for those things. This couple $100 for a family on a season ticket plan, extra is going to go directly towards paying the student athletes that come to play football at Tennessee. And sure, you got your NIL collectives and stuff, but not everybody from your NIL collective, or not everybody's going to get paid by the NIL collective. This is going to go to everyone. This goes directly into the student athletes' pockets, and that's going to be like $3 million a year. That's a lot of money.
And also, I don't think people realize how far our facilities had fallen behind. Like Neyland, needed all these upgrades. Thompson Bowling Arena / Food City Center needed all of these upgrades because they were basic to an extent. Now, the atmospheres were amazing on the inside, but in terms of pure fan experience, you had no Wi-Fi. The concourses were very tight. Concession options were not that great.
You got to look at other dudes while you pee. I mean, we love the troughs. They're a cult hero here, but let's be real. Most people don't like to do that. Most people like to have individual urinals. Let's be real. All of these upgrades are necessary. Neyland Stadium sucks. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. Neyland Stadium 2 years ago, probably one of the worst in terms of fan experiences outside of the atmosphere that the people create. As far as amenities, to the stadium was one of the worst stadiums in college football. And we love Neyland. We love Neyland because of that crowd. The crowd makes it special. The building is a dilapidated piece of crap. And this is going to renovations. This is making it better. If anybody's ever been to Tuscaloosa, you understand what I mean when I say this. When you walk in at Bryant-Denny Stadium into the away supporters end, when you go through and get your tickets, you have to go through this little gate, and you go in through what is obviously an old part of the building. They just kind of built around the original building. It's like walking into 1925. And you see this, and then you realize, wow, that looks like the outside of Neyland Stadium. Okay. When you're looking at specifically like South Stadium Hall and the anthropology department on that part of the building. And you see these things, and then you go in there, and you feel like, wow, this feels like an NFL stadium from the 21st century. You've got giant LED boards in two corners. You have a ribbon band around the entirety of the bowl. And you have Wi-Fi. You have all these different amenities, and you think, wow, okay. Outside, this was like 1925, but inside, it's like 2024. This is awesome. And that's what Tennessee is going to do. That's what Tennessee needs to do. And Alabama has shown you can do that when you have a winning football team. Sure, Nick Saban's not walking through the door, but Josh Heupel's a pretty damn good coach. Let's not get it wrong.
Yeah, Georgia Stadium, too, is really, really nice as well on the inside. I've been there. I mean, it's just in terms of amenities, as you said, Neyland needed all these upgrades. So, and it's going to only pay dividends because that means recruits are going to be more likely to come here if their families that come like the same. Because, I mean, how many recruits have we lost potentially because the family's like, yeah, the atmosphere was cool, but, man, I don't know if I really want to sit in that stadium 7 times a year. You know?
And if you don't take care of your stadium, what makes you think they're going to take care of the weight room or take care of the playing surface or take care of anything? And little things like that add up. And they pay dividends, like you said, in recruiting, in fan experience. More fans are happy, more fans are willing to pay to get in. And you can host more events there. I know people think it's blasphemous that Neyland Stadium is hosting concerts, but I think hosting Garth Brooks, Morgan Wallen, big country artists especially, I think that's a terrific idea to make money for the school. And same thing with Thompson Bowling Arena, the Food City Center, for lower level acts. And I say that tongue in cheek, considering that it's still like a 25,000 seat concert, which is massive. But when you have a 102,000 seat stadium and you can fill that plus on the field a little bit, you can get like 110,000 people in there for a country artist. I mean, for anybody, but especially for a country artist in East Tennessee, that's directly going into the pocket of the athletic department and of the school. Those things are free money. Sure, you may have, take 10% of that maybe to fix up the field after you trample it with the things on top, and you still make 90% profit. Seems like a worthwhile bet to me.
And getting to the point, Jason, that you brought up right now is that I don't understand why college athletic departments, not only at Tennessee but other universities, do not use more of their football stadium throughout the non-football season, because those concerts should be more, especially in the summer where there's no games. May, June, July, August, like fill that stadium with concerts. I would have put as like do like a not a like kind of like a festival. Bring a lot of artists and make money. Like especially use, because I think it's very obsolete, especially from what I see right now in Brazil and other countries, where football stadium is only to play football. That's archaic. I'm sorry, that's the new reality. Here in Brazil, Palmeiras Stadium, Sao Paulo Stadium, even now Corinthians Stadium is being used for other things than soccer. Corinthians Stadium just hosts an NFL game. Palmeiras Stadium is hosting as many concerts as they can. São Paulo is hosting concerts as well. So I think other way that college athletics can make money is to designate a special time for concerts, and then you have like a month to get the field back to their good stand. I don't know. I think, and that's possible because here in Brazil, I see how they make it up the grass after concerts.
Louisville did a terrific job of this before anybody. Louisville had Taylor Swift, Kenny Chesney, and there was a rap artist. And this is in about 2018, 19. They had a bunch of concerts back to back to back in Cardinal Stadium in the spring and early summer months. And then, like you said, Gus, just immediately went back to, okay, well, we got plenty of time. Let's get it back ready to go. And then they did. And I tend to agree that the more days your stadium sits empty, you are losing money. When you have a facility that can host big events, and once you get the renovations done, will be worthy of hosting these big events, you're losing money to not try to get them.
And I know people are going to be like, oh, well, you got Nashville 3 hours away. Everyone's just going to go there. I mean, not necessarily. Because Knoxville and East Tennessee is close enough to so much of a population, such a big population, that you can. Like, I'm just
and for
about,
Morgan
like,
Wallen, like, where else are you going to get 102,000 or 110 even 1,000-seat stadium? You're not getting that in Nashville. You're not getting that in Charlotte. You're not even getting that in Atlanta.
exactly.
And that's crazy for me that it took because I guess the last time there was a concert like that in, from what I can recall, I might be wrong, was in
Probably Garth Brooks.
2019. Yeah, Garth Brooks in 2019. So it took 5 years to get a concert like that again, where the demand is there.
Well, I wish they would bring a non-country artist to Neyland. Now, I don't know if they're ever going to find. I mean, I guess
That's more like a Thompson Bowling Arena. When Maroon 5 went to Knoxville, they are a big band worldwide and in America too. They didn't fill up Thompson Bowling Arena. I remember there were it was not empty, it was full, but it wasn't like a sellout, kind of because it's country. It's a country area. People
but like,
like
what year was that? Because Maroon 5
2016.
kind of. Okay, so
2016.
they're still pretty popular at that point.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, so I think for a big stadium like Neyland, I think the demand is more for country artists because it's an area that engage more in the call. Atlanta might be different. I mean, how many times went to Mercedes-Benz Stadium for rap concerts? Because I guess the demand for the kind of genre of music was more into rap
Yeah.
than country.
Well, I'll
I
say
mean,
this,
Nick,
and this
Nick,
is
you've got a personal experience. You paid
Yeah,
less money to go see somebody in Nashville than you would have in Atlanta.
exactly. So, like
Kendrick
Kendrick
Lamar?
Lamar, for example, like Kendrick Lamar,
Yeah.
obviously next year's Super Bowl performer. I had a choice between seeing him in Atlanta or Nashville because he performed in Atlanta on like a Saturday, performed in Nashville that very next night on a Sunday. So here in Chattanooga, equal distance, I can choose which one. And to see him in Nashville was half the price because Atlanta has a much larger African American population. Obviously, that means you're gonna have a higher percentage of rap fans in Atlanta. And Atlanta is just known as a black mecca. It is probably the single most important city for African Americans in this country, just because of MLK and the fact the South just historically has a large African American population. But going to Nashville, that's the country music capital of the world. It's a much different scene, a much different vibe. So going to see him in Nashville was half the price. Well, reversing and going back to Atlanta, to see someone like a Zach Bryan, for example. Zach Bryan in Nashville, that's $300 plus because one of the biggest country music artists. But to see him in Atlanta was only like $150 because there's a lot of country music fans in Georgia. It's a southern state. But Atlanta itself is such a diverse melting pot now and much more leans towards a hip hop haven. Like a lot of like rap artists, like look at like a Future or obviously Drake spends a lot of time there. But country artists don't really spend a lot of time in Atlanta. So that's not really the first market people think of when it comes to country music. So When I want to see a country artist, I want to see like a Phoebe Bridgers. I saw Phoebe Bridgers in Atlanta for $40. In Nashville, that would be at least $150. You know, she's not country necessarily, but like her style of music flies much more in Nashville than Atlanta. So I exploit this all the time. Because basically, if I want to see a rap artist or like an R&B type artist, I go see him in Nashville. Like I saw Lil Yachty in Nashville for $25 versus it would have been like $80 in Atlanta. Or if I want to go see a country artist, I go see him in or Nashville. I mean, go see Lil Yachty in Nashville. If I want to go see a country guy or a pop guy, I'm going down to Atlanta because it's cheaper. So it's really interesting how, you know, markets like that, you know, you can exploit that. At least in my, of course, in Chattanooga, it's like perfectly positioned to exploit that. But, you know, Knoxville, as you said, it's going to be country music no matter what. And I don't know if it's really in a perfect position to really exploit that at all.
But yeah, and I think this deep analysis is to understand the market that you are, and now I think college athletics throughout the United States of America will have to find creative ways to get money, and that includes multi-use of their facilities. The romantic times where a football stadium was for football only are over. Those people have to get over that.
Yeah, and I think you should be able to use anything. Like, I mean, look at speedways. I mean, you know, Daytona hosts music festivals and other stuff. IMS hosts a whole bunch of stuff that are not the Indy 500. You know, like, I mean,
one of them's literally this weekend. IMSA's coming this weekend for a sports car race for the first time in 10 years. Indianapolis has hosted the Red Bull Air Race. Indianapolis Motor Speedway hosts concerts. Indianapolis Motor Speedway does all kinds of crap. Why?
Exactly.
Because you can. You have the seats there, and they're just sitting there empty. You can make money.
Exactly. And with all these upgrades and with this ticket fee, that's what Neyland Stadium can do. So definitely very so yeah, obviously people are gonna I think when people really sit down and really understand this, there'll be more and more support. I mean, heck, just sitting here talking about it, I think my support for it has gone up in the past 40 minutes. Just kind of sitting here talking about it. So yeah, definitely very interesting business. How the sausage is made, but this is all important. So our Tennessee Volunteers can continue to only get better and to challenge the Titans of college football for the crown. And of course, that for Tennessee really starts in earnest this week. Now, before we get into Oklahoma, I do want to kind of get into the Kent State game just briefly. It was a bloodbath. I don't know. That might be the most overmatched team I've ever seen in Kent State. It was bad. 71-0. It was 65-0 at halftime. And one talking point I've seen some people bring up is some people having an issue with the onside kick that Josh Heupel had in the first quarter, up 30-0. Do we think that and just the overall score at halftime was it unsportsmanlike?
Hell no. No, it wasn't. Because Josh Heupel offered to shorten the quarters and run the clock, and Kent State's coach declined. What that tells me is he said, look, we're going to use this as a practice. And Josh Heupel said, all right, cool. Let's run this like a practice. Because they knew they were going to lose. They just wanted to come out of there with the money and good health. And so Josh Heupel's probably saying, hey, at some point I'm gonna run some stuff. We'll practice some stuff that's deeper in the playbook. We'll practice, some onside stuff. But the first thing that I see is is Kent State lined up in a return formation that left the entire middle of the field open at the 10-yard window for the onside kick. And that's the perfect opportunity to practice something like that. I don't think Josh Heupel called for that. I think whoever the kickoff guy was on that particular kickoff, I don't know if that was Turbeville or if
I'm pretty sure
who
it was.
But that's a moment where you have to look at your kickoff team and be like, look, we're doing this because we can. And that's a good practice moment for a game against, an Oklahoma, against a Georgia. And the proof that Tennessee was not being unsportsmanlike is sitting right in front of you on the box score. 65-0 at halftime, and then you put up 2 field goals for the rest of the game. That's all you need to see. Because first of all, we offered to shorten the game and they declined it, so we said, okay, cool. We'll just put in Navy Schuler or whoever in the fourth quarter in mop-up duty, and then we'll get all the walk-ons some playing time.
Yeah, I didn't
Easy
know.
enough.
I didn't know half the players who were on the field, but in that game.
Yeah, it's because they're all walk-ons. And see, that's the thing. Mad respect to the Kent State coach too for not only showing up but playing the full game and just using it as an opportunity to get better. And that's essentially what it became, was a glorified practice. And to your point, Nick, I'll shut up here in a second. To your point, I think that is the most overmatched that we have seen in a long time. The Chattanooga Mocs were a better opponent than Kent State, and I think the Mocs would go up there and would beat Kent State. Truly.
Yeah. I mean, Kent State the week before lost to St. Francis, Pennsylvania, which is an FCS team who I don't even think are ranked in the FCS. And the Mocs, they've had a rough start. They're 0-3. They lost to Mercer the other night. But they still have plenty of time to turn things around and SoCon play. But I agree. The Mocs, I think, would beat Kent State. That poor center. Like, you can tell that team, when they walked out onto Neyland Stadium, their eyes were wide open and they pissed their pants. I mean, that center especially was terrified. Like, I would imagine none of those players had ever experienced anything quite like that. And they weren't ready to face a crowd that intense on the road.
Yeah, and good for Josh Heupel to get those walk on that experience, because imagine, like, that's probably the opportunity to step onto the field and defend the colors of the Tennessee Volunteers. And that means something. That means something for those athletes who are not on the top list, who are not the starters, but they got that opportunity. They probably have pictures for a lifetime. Probably though. And now working with soccer, I don't know how it works in football if that happens. But here in Brazil, like, there's some photographers who earn money by selling pictures to athletes. Those walk-on probably bought as many pictures as they could of their performance on the field, because those are memories for a lifetime.
Because I think the school has their own photographers anyway, so I'm pretty sure that those players will definitely be getting pictures of them on the field in Neyland Stadium for a game.
Definitely. And yes, the schools have their own in-house photographers. They're not always hired by the school, but some of these people that shoot for publications also, as part of their credential deal, do send their photos to the school for school use in publication or whatever. My buddy Jared is one of them at Louisville. His pictures get used for all the Olympic sports all the time on the website and on Twitter and everything.
That would be such a cool job to have.
Oh yeah. No, I'm curious to ask him, because now working inside a sports organization here in Rio Branco, that's the kind of deal I make with photographers. Because here in Rio Branco, we don't have a photographer in house. So the deal that I make with freelance photographers is like, okay, we get you a credential with the team, and then you can take as many pictures as they want to sell, but you have to give to the club at least 10 pictures for our use, for our social media, website, and our stuff. The rest you sell it. That's why I'll be curious to see what's the deal. I mean, I would imagine when a school has their own photographer, then they give all the pictures to the athletes, but I don't know how the situation otherwise.
Jared's deal is basically he agrees to do all the sports that nobody gives a shit about. In exchange, they give him credentials for all the big sports. So he gets football, men's basketball, women's basketball,
That's a good
credentials
deal.
over
That's a good deal.
top of much larger media outlets, because they don't care about going and taking photos of field hockey or lacrosse. But Jared will be there like clockwork, and he gets in and is able to do that, and he's happy to let the school use his photos. And so and he's made a halfway decent career out of being a sporting photographer now, on top of his day job. And so, it's much like you said, Gus, it's a gift in kind type of barter, where, he goes and takes the pictures of the sports that nobody cares about, and they give him credentials over some of the news stations and stuff for for what he wants. And it works out for everyone.
Absolutely. Shout out to Jarrett for sure. Had such a fun, cool career. Kind of, I guess, wrapping up just the Kent State thing, because I guess the last question I kind of had on here was, how much do we really gain from this? Obviously, we kind of regard as growth by practice. Obviously Nico had some nice throws. Of course, a really big touchdown downfield of Chris Brazzell. The running game was just absolutely dominant between both Sampson having 4 touchdowns, Sean Bishop had 2 touchdowns. Defense was lights out. But, I mean, is there anything we can really take away? Or is it just, Tennessee came out, did what they were supposed to do to a severely overmatched opponent, and we got out of this with really no injuries?
You can only play who's in front of you. And you still have to go out and make the right reads. Even if your opponent's overmatched, you still have to make the right reads. You still have to throw the ball. You still have to, hit the hole. And the fact that our guys did it to the degree that they did, I think that's a tremendous testament.
But look how far Tennessee football had come. Look how far. And 5 years ago, Tennessee faced 2, I guess, both FBS low division schools. And one game was terrible. Tennessee won, but was terrible against Charlotte 49ers. It was a terrible game. Jesus Christ, was really awful football. I remember it was like 14-3. And then on the opener, Tennessee lost to Georgia State. And now we're crushing Kansas State and Chattanooga. Look how far this program come. 5 years ago,
41-point win against a ranked opponent. No
yeah,
less.
yeah. Look how far this program come from 5 years ago to now. I'm not even quoting 2020. I'm going back to 2019, like a normal season, no COVID issues. I mean, and in the same stadium that year, Tennessee faced medium West Virginia and got demolished. And now we won by 41, a ranked NC State.
Exactly. And it just goes to show, and you can kind of compare some other SEC teams this week. Look at what happened to Mississippi State, getting absolutely ran off the field by the Toledo Rockets. They were down 35-3 in that game, ended up losing 41-17. Or Vanderbilt going to Georgia State, which is embarrassing enough in its own right. SEC teams have no business going on the road to the Sun Belt, but then losing at Georgia State. And we're out here just casually in front of 65 in the first half. I can't recall our quarterback ever getting pulled in the second quarter because we were up by so much.
And people have the nerve to question what Danny White's doing.
That's very true. It is very true. And I think, partially, maybe I'm just listening to the outside noise a bit from Georgia fans or Alabama fans or Ohio State. Being like, okay, Tennessee, you've beaten up on Chattanooga, NC State, Kent State. What are you going to do against a real team? And I think that's annoyed by some.
Because a ranked opponent is not a real team.
Some of these people out here are saying NC State was not a real team. At least that's the claim they're making now. But for all those people, for all those lovely, lovely Tennessee haters out there, you'll learn this week because there's no turning around from the game that's in front of the Tennessee Volunteers, because the eyes turn out west to the Great Plains, to the rolling hills, to the state that Rodgers and Hammerstein wrote about, Oklahoma, Norman. It's the game of the week, Tennessee, Oklahoma, perhaps one of the most interesting, if not the most interesting game of the year so far in all of college football. I can't recall a regular season game with this many storylines. And I want to peel this back one layer at a time. So on the Oklahoma side, this is their SEC opener as a program. It's their only chance they'll ever get to have their first SEC game at home. Texas has their first one next week against probably the worst team in the SEC and Mississippi State. But Oklahoma, meanwhile, gets Tennessee. Kind of, just for, and then, you look at Tennessee coming in, of course, with Josh Heupel. Josh Heupel was the last quarterback.
Let's go one at a time. You said let's peel it back one at a time.
Okay. Let's do Oklahoma SEC
one at a time.
So
I want to go back really quickly to your first point that you made about all the haters are saying what happens with a real team. All right, well, looking back about 10 days ago, the University of Houston went to Norman and almost beat Oklahoma. So let's kill that real quick about the Oklahoma fans talking about beating up on bad teams, and they also only beat Tulane 34-19. Listen, I get Tulane's a pretty decent football program for Group of Five, but you're not beating up on teams the way that you should be.
Right, and then if you look at some of the stats of Oklahoma, they've given up 9 sacks in 3 games.
Against players that are not named James Pierce, might I add.
I know heading into last week's game, they had completed, I think it was 2 third down conversions. They were like 131st in the country in third downs conversions heading into last week. I think they're still very, very low in that. So they've struggled on third downs. They struggle protecting the quarterback. Oklahoma, for years, we've known them for their offense, right? With Lincoln Riley, they were producing Heisman quarterback after Heisman quarterback. But things are different now. When you look at this offense and look at the struggles. Now, Jackson Arnold, their quarterback, he came in the exact same class as Nico Iamaleava. Because Nico was the number 1 quarterback in that class. Jackson Arnold was basically your number 2 in that class. Both highly rated. And this is, for them, it's their it's each quarterback's biggest game so far. And when we look at the Nico versus Arnold matchup, which quarterback has more pressure here? Which one has more to prove? Because to me, I think Arnold has more to prove. But I think most folks, recognize how good Nico is. I think there's still a lot of doubt on how good Jackson Arnold is.
I think it's Jackson Arnold, and simply put, it's because Nico Iamaleava played against the number 3 defense in the country in Iowa last year in his very first start and carved them up 35-0 in a game the 3 of us went to. We watched firsthand with our own 2 eyes how good he was against a very good Iowa defense. Jackson Arnold has proved a bunch of not shit, and I think he is solid, but the pressure is squarely on him. Nico Iamaleava, he's played a grand total of about 5 quarters of football in 3 games. All right. That should tell you all you need to know about how well he's been playing. Because again, you can only play who is in front of you. And he's done pretty damn well.
And don't forget too that Jackson Arnold, he played, I believe it was Arizona in the bowl game, and they had 6 turnovers in that bowl game as well. So he did not get off to a great start because Nico did not have any turnovers against Iowa, that number 3 defense in the country. Meanwhile, Arnold went out against Arizona, a team whose defense this year has absolutely stunk. Arizona's defense has not been very good. They got 40 to New Mexico, got carved up the other night by Kansas State. Hasn't been as impressive, right? 16 points against Houston. And Houston, the week before they went to Norman, lost to UNLV 34-7. Now, UNLV, all said and done, might be the best G5 team in the country. They just beat Kansas the other night. They're going to be in contention for that playoff spot. But still, like, if UNLV can beat Houston 34-7, then Oklahoma should be able to at least match that. And they just were not able to against Houston, who is in the running for worst P4 team, because I think a lot of people forget that Houston is technically a P4 team now. They certainly don't feel like it. Tulane, as you said, one of the better G5 programs, but they've kind of screwed themselves out of a G5 spot. But once again, a game there where Oklahoma should have done more than they did. Now, I will say this. Oklahoma's defense has played well so far. But again, the competition level. Because Tulane, I think, is easily the best offense they've played. But still, like, Tulane is not Tennessee.
No, nobody is Tennessee. Tennessee's got the best offense in the country, and it's not close. And everybody said, "Oh, well, they're just gimmicky. They just like to throw verts and whatever." Okay, well then explain why Dylan Sampson has like 1,000 yards rushing or something crazy in the first couple of games. I have no idea what he actually has. It feels like he's got like 1,000, but I mean the sentiment stands. Tell me why Dylan Sampson is doing so well for himself and why he's an early Heisman contender if all this offense is gimmicky for verts.
Right. So far, 357, 9 touchdowns on the year so far. And
like I said, it feels like 1,000.
Yeah. And as you said, Nico has been the Heisman guy, but I mean, Dylan Sampson's going to get into that combo before long of all these touchdowns he's
People
scoring.
don't understand. People that don't watch this team don't understand. They see all the highlights of all the long, deep throws. They don't understand that this entire offense is built around gritty, ground and pound football.
Yeah. And I think people, too, they're going to learn who Deshaun Bishop is after this week, too. Because Deshaun Bishop has really impressed me so far, the freshman out of Carnes High School in Knoxville. And I love that we're getting a Knoxville guy that's going to be a significant contributor.
I know Carnes High School. I went there a couple of times. I know a girl who went there. So kudos. It's a great area of Knoxville. Great area.
Absolutely. And they've produced a great running back in Deshaun Bishop, who really is getting a lot of playing time early because Cam Seldon's hurt. But I don't know if Cam Seldon's going to get that RB2 spot back because Bishop so far has shown that he probably deserves that RB2 spot. Because, I mean, Cam Seldon has impressed me in what I've seen, but Bishop has been so impressive early on that I think you got to write the hot hand right now.
Absolutely. And going back to that, Deshaun Bishop, redshirt freshman out of Carnes, 3-star recruit. But you know who appreciates talent when he sees it? Josh Heupel. He's able to find those guys who are maybe undervalued, underappreciated, on top of the 5-star Nico Yamaliava types.
Absolutely. And I think, looking back at Nico here, we're about to, one of the things he said in the offseason was obviously he loves playing in Neyland, loves playing in front of the Fall Nation, but he really loves playing on the road. And this is his first road game. And, and this has really been the kryptonite of the Heupel era so far. 2022, going to Georgia, going to South Carolina. The South Carolina game in particular, although let's be real, Michigan helped them.
We know why.
But still, that's not some bad mojo on the road because we look at last year, go to Florida, just embarrass ourselves, and then lost to 2 better teams in Missouri and Alabama last year. But really, at Florida last year, at Carolina the year before that, we got to get some mojo back on the road because if you look at the last 2 years, Vandy and Kentucky are the only 2 road games we've really won. And then the last really big road game we really won was LSU back in 2022. And I said at the end of last year, looking ahead to this year, what's going to determine the success of the Heupel era in general, in addition to this team, is can they win big games on the road? And now we have arrived at that moment. We will truly find out if this team can. And, it all starts with Nico and how he handles the pressure. Because this Oklahoma crowd, I've been listening to some Oklahoma podcasts and stuff, and they say this is probably the most anticipated home game in Norman for them in decades. It's at least probably 2016 Ohio State, maybe 2008 Texas Tech, which obviously were some huge games in Norman. For Nico,
throwing it back to Graham Harrell, that's a throwback.
Yeah, because remember that after Texas Tech had upset Texas, I think they were number 2 in the country, and the next week they went to Norman, and Oklahoma was like number 5. And OU had to beat Texas Tech to make the Big 12 title because remember they screwed Texas out of it, even though Texas beat OU. But OU got the spot to go to the Big 12 title, and then they went to the national championship. So it was all possible because of that win over Texas Tech. I think they won like 65-21 or something crazy like that. But OU does not have Sam Bradford in this game.
They don't have Adrian Peterson either. Adrian Peterson's not walking through the door. And really quickly, I want to touch on what you said about Nico Yamaliava loving road games more than playing at Neyland. And I want to set something straight here. This is not a slight to Neyland at all. If you have ever been a part of a football program or any sports team, really, that was good, you'll understand what I'm about to say. There is nothing quite like getting off the bus, whooping ass, giving an L, and getting back on the bus to go home. There is nothing like it. As a coach, I loved coaching on the road because I loved going into a hostile environment and waiting for, the students of the other school, to just yell profane things at us, be hostile. And then all of a sudden our kids score touchdowns and they're running over to the student section, shushing them. There's nothing quite like that.
I get you, Jason, because even though I am not a player or part of a coaching staff, I work in a soccer club, so I know how it feels. So I know how it feels to go to a hostile environment. Especially this year, going to a semifinal, and that was do or die, go promoted or nothing, and in front of 10,000 people, and listen to our fans, shedding out, and our players shushing the crowd. Like road games are like winning on the road for the team. I don't know if Jason feels the same. Feels better than winning at home. Now, I'm not saying, of course, you want to win in front of your fans and it feels great, but winning on the road, it has a different feeling.
Absolutely, and Nick was a part of the biggest win in Indy 11 history, which was also on the road. That win is big, but it's even better when it's on the road. And 100%, I agree with you, Gus. Aaron Young in the comments, by the way, says free baptisms. He'll attest to this. He played Division I college football. He coaches now at the high school level. Nothing quite like going on the road, giving an L, and getting back on the bus. There's nothing quite like it. And anybody that's ever been involved with competitive sports understands what we mean by that. And it's the people that have never played, or whatever. And all respect to the people that have never played or coached or had anything to do with sports. They're just a fan. I understand. No hate, not at all. But when you've been a part of it, you understand. It's nothing personal against the Neyland crowd, because playing in Neyland, that's got to be magical. That's why they come to the University of Tennessee. But not every road game ends up being one of the fun ones. But when you know that you're involved with one, then you know. Aaron actually, in the comments, shouted out his win against Eastern Kentucky. I was at that game. It was awesome. I skipped out on a Tennessee game to drive up to Richmond to see Aaron play, and they walked it off against Eastern Kentucky with a Hail Mary. It was one of the best finishes I've ever seen. That would have been fun in Terre Haute, but it was way more fun when we're, about 15 or 20 of us are going crazy and the rest of the stadium is just mad. It's hilarious.
It's like one of my favorite Tennessee moments ever. Tennessee, Georgia, Hail Mary 2016. Jawan Jennings.
Absolutely.
Like that moment was 1,000 times more magical than Athens.
100%. Because when you look at the crowd and this is the reaction you see on every other person, yeah, that's more fun. Sorry, it's nothing against the Neyland crowd, not for a second. And please, please, please don't take it that way if you are a Tennessee fan, because that's not what he means. Not at all.
Yeah, and I think Nico is going to be fine, because I saw it 2 weeks ago. Because Nico in the NC State game, right? Like he had 2 interceptions. They threw one in the second half, in the first half. They come right back next possession. He throws a 50-yard bomb to score a wide. And then in the second half, there's a pick six that happened. He comes right back and I believe threw a touchdown the very next drive. Like, he showed that he doesn't get rattled. He shows that he has shown to me so far that he knows when he's made a mistake, but he's going to come right back and just play like it's 0-0.
And to me, coming back from the pick six and then just leading the methodical touchdown drive, the next drive, was the most impressive thing I've ever seen out of him as a quarterback. It cannot be understated how difficult that is to just put that out of your mind and go back to work, and not only go back to work, but be at the top of your game.
Exactly. And yeah, there's probably no one better to understand what he's about to face than his head coach in Josh Heupel. Because Heupel, it's been talked about ad nauseum, but Heupel's background, he played in Oklahoma. He was the quarterback, led them to the national title in 2000, was brought there by the late Mike Leach, rest in peace, to the Pirates. And then from there, went on to be a coach there, assistant coach, elevated himself to offensive coordinator, was at that position for a few years, and in a controversial move even to this day, was fired by Bob Stoops. If you talk to some Oklahoma fans, a lot of them say that he should have not been. He was a coordinator that shouldn't have been fired. It should have been Mike Stoops, Bob's brother. But in any case, Bob Stoops made that decision, and Josh Heupel had to kind of go into the wilderness. He ended up at Utah State, and because Josh Heupel didn't always run this offense, this veer and shoot. He ran a more traditional spread offense at Oklahoma. But he went to Utah State, he adopted the Art Briles veer and shoot and put his own twist and spins on it. And he was able to elevate himself from Utah State to Missouri to UCF to Tennessee. And now has built Tennessee from an absolute dumpster fire when he inherited it to a top flight team, and now takes it in a full circle moment back to Norman. And I can't even imagine what this is going to be like for him.
I think it's also very important to consider on the way he got Drew Lock drafted by an NFL team in the second round. Can we just take a moment to commend that coaching job really quickly? But I think this is going to be quite personal for him. But these players love Josh Heupel. These players are going to be more personally offended than he is. Oh, they did this. They disrespected my coach. Not on my watch. And they're going to go in there with a chip on their shoulder that they didn't even have. It's not even their chip to bear. And these players are going to go in there feeling that animosity.
And you do wonder, will it affect Heupel's coaching at all? Is he going to be – because he's typically a very aggressive coach.
It's not going to affect him. He's going to do what he does. He's not going to be swayed. The opinion of the sheep does not affect the lion. Josh Heupel is the lion.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think, it's going to be interesting to see what that reaction is, because it's going to be different than when, Kiffin came back to Neyland, right? Because when Kiffin came back to Neyland, it was just a straight war for 5 hours between the crowd and Kiffin.
A literal war for about 20 minutes.
Yeah. But, I think the OU fans...
But I think there's a different feeling, because it wasn't Josh Heupel that ditched Oklahoma. Oklahoma ditched Josh Heupel. So it's not a feeling of ungratefulness. It's a feeling of appreciation. And if Tennessee wins, even more feeling of, darn it, could have been us.
True. And granted, I think OU does have a good head coach in Brent Venables, especially from a defensive standpoint. Because I think from recruiting-wise, he's doing really well out there. But the problem is their offense has fallen off from where it was under Lincoln Riley. Now, Lincoln Riley is just one of the top 5 offensive coaches in the game. But still, Oklahoma was used to having an elite offense, and they just don't have that anymore. Now they no longer have Lincoln Riley. So Josh Heupel now has that elite offense. But more importantly, he might also have the better defense in this game. And I think he does have the better defense in this game, especially when it comes to the front seven. And if college football is all about matchups, then the biggest mismatch in this game to me is the Tennessee front seven versus the Oklahoma offensive line. I think they are going to make Jackson Arnold's life a living hell for 3 hours. And as long as the Tennessee defense can exploit that matchup, I think the defense is going to play just fine. Now, there's also discussion of, has the secondary really been tested yet? Because I thought they played extremely well against NC State. And outside of one big play to Casey Concepcion, which NC State required a whole bunch of trickeration, a really weird formation, really a nonsensical play to get a big chunk play. I mean, Tennessee shut them down for the rest of the game. And people are like, NC State had nothing. But NC State has good players. They have, Concepcion. They have Justin Jolly, the tight end. I like their running back.
They're not ranked for fun.
Yeah, they have talent in NC State. And people are acting like, Tennessee hasn't really truly played anyone. The secondary hasn't been tested. I mean, I don't know. We're acting like NC State just sucks. I mean, completely. I mean, NC State may come in a little bit lower than expectations, but let's not act like they're just abysmal. Aaron Young asked, "Is this Nico's first test as a QB?" No, because Iowa was certainly a test in his first start, the number 3 defense in the country. And there were times in that game where it wasn't smooth versus Iowa, because Iowa was a really good defense, but they were able to break through. And NC State certainly had talent. Now, maybe not the talent necessary to ultimately beat Tennessee, and that's why we were ultimately able to run away with that one. But, I mean, Tony Gibson is a very good defensive coordinator. And he threw everything he had at Tennessee. And we only scored 20 in the first half. And it was a really tight game. And it should have been a tied game midway through the second quarter until Grayson McCall threw a pick 6 to Will Brooks and kind of sent NC State into the night.
And I tend to agree that schematically, from a strictly football perspective, absolutely not. This is not the first test. But going back, I think that the crowd, that's going to be a test that he hasn't faced yet. But I don't think it's one he is going to falter at. I think he's going to embrace that and say, this crowd's loud, but let me get to work and we'll quiet them real quick. And that's the mentality that you want your quarterback to have.
I mean, all the great quarterbacks, too, have iconic road wins. I mean, think about 2019 Joe Burrow, going to LSU, going to Texas, 2010 Cam Newton, going to Alabama, winning the Iron Bowl in a massive comeback. And I'm not saying Nico is those guys yet. I think he has the potential to be, but obviously he's going to have to win a couple of these. But this is his first opportunity to really start elevating himself into that conversation. And I think Nico is ready. I think the secondary is ready. Because you look at guys like Jamar McCoy. McCoy, he looks like the best quarterback we've had in a decade, at least. And I'm excited for these guys to be in this position, to be in front of the whole country, because everyone who's a college football fan is going to be watching this game. And these people who may not think Tennessee's a problem are going to learn about Tennessee. And that's why the last question I had on here was, is this one of our biggest regular season game in years? I mean, obviously, you look at 22 Alabama, 22 Georgia. Those were some huge, huge games. But I think this is the opportunity for Tennessee to say that 22 season wasn't a fluke. We are a program to be reckoned with.
I think this is absolutely, unequivocally, 100% the biggest game in years. Only Alabama 2022 was only big in retrospect because we won. This is the biggest game under the brightest lights, with the most scrutiny and the most shit talking online and the most on the line going into a game for as long as I can remember. Unequivocally, yes, is my answer to that question.
Absolutely. And it's going to be interesting, too, because, people are making all kinds of conclusions, whether or not Tennessee is a championship contender, whether or not Oklahoma belongs in the SEC off of this one game. And it's just, and I feel like there's going to be some overreactions. I think Oklahoma, even if they come out and lose this game, they'll have plenty of opportunities to show they belong in this conference. So I think ultimately Oklahoma will prove they belong in this conference. But that doesn't mean they're the better team here. And I think it's going to be nuts. I think it's going to come down to, early on, because I think, Oklahoma's going to come out with a ton of energy. That crowd's going to come out with a ton of energy. Tennessee is going to get a punch. Can they redirect that punch like they did against NC State and deliver a knockout punch? And more importantly, for Oklahoma, NC State kind of had one punch, and Tennessee took it back and just nuked them off the face of the earth. When Tennessee does that, can Oklahoma withstand that and finally want to make this a 4-quarter game? Because the longer they hang around, obviously the more chance Oklahoma has to win this thing. But
I think that really comes down to, for me, I think it's Nico Yamaliava is going to make some mistakes, and it's how he responds to that first one that's going to really determine how the game goes. In NC State, he threw the pick 6, not really his fault, but still goes back to him. And he immediately went and led a methodical touchdown drive. If he can do something like that and just shake it off against Oklahoma in Norman, it's going to be a long night to be an Oklahoma Sooner.
Absolutely. I think, too, also run game. Our run game has looked dominant so far. If we can establish a run game, then Oklahoma's defense is going to be in a really difficult position. But Oklahoma potentially has the pieces up front to at least slow that down for a bit and muddy this thing up for a while. But Tennessee just has to be persistent in that, and the dam will break. So, because in my mind, I think this could be a game where it's going to be really close in the first half. I don't think Tennessee's going to come out and just wipe them off the face of the earth. But I think this is one where Tennessee's going to have to just fight through, and punch the dam until it breaks. And it'll break, in my opinion. So we're asking who wins. What are your score predictions? What do you think will be the ultimate key? Because Jason, I guess you said the key. Nico, how he responds to that first mistake. What do you think the score looks like here?
For me, it's gonna be exactly like 2015. The road team wins at overtime.
Ooh. Oh, and let's not forget that, too. I didn't even finish to bring that up. For me, as a fan, I want revenge so bad for that 2015 game. Thank you for bringing that up, Gus. Because, we played them twice a decade ago, 2014, 2015. 2014, we didn't have a team yet. I mean, we were playing Justin Worley at quarterback. It is what it is. We were outmatched in that game. But 2015 in Neyland Stadium with Josh Dobbs, Alvin Kamara, we jumped to a 17-0 lead, and that was like the second checker kneeling game ever. And it was glorious. It looked like Tennessee was on their way to a huge win, but then Baker Mayfield was able to make enough big plays in the second half, and our offense just completely disappeared. And you can thank, a certain Butch Jones for that. And it led into, the football terrorists, as we like to say. And we lost in overtime. And that loss set back this program. Because
yeah, I'm with you, Nick. I think this is, from a fan perspective, this is a revenge game. But more than anything, from a team perspective, it's a revenge game for the reasons I was saying before. Sure, Josh Heupel will downplay it, but the players won't. The players aren't going to downplay that. The players are going to be like, oh, they disrespected our coach. To hell with them. Let's make these guys look stupid. And to answer Aaron's question in the comments, saying Oklahoma's coming from the Big 12, a conference known for high-scoring shootouts. Does that not help OU? No, because they didn't know how to play defense. That's something Tennessee does pretty well. And when you have a guy in James Pierce, playing on the D line, he probably won't be the number one pick, but at least is in conversations as a top draft pick in the NFL. That's a problem. And I think, especially considering that this is not Lincoln Riley's Oklahoma, I don't think that helps them at all. If they had Jalen Hurts, if they had Baker Mayfield, if they had Kyler Murray, if they had one of those guys, sure. But Jackson Arnold is not that guy yet. I'm not sure he'll ever get to be, that level. But even if he does, he's not there right now. I think this absolutely plays into the Tennessee Vols' hands. I I think Tennessee wins, and I think it's going to be relatively close for a long time. Give me 45. Give me 45 to 30. I think it'll be relatively close throughout, and I think Tennessee pulls away at the end.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit closer than that just because I do think Oklahoma, just with the talent, they're going to have too much talent to just be totally blown away here. But as you mentioned, outside of James Pierce, don't overlook guys like Joshua Josephs or Amari Thomas or Bryson Eason. I mean, there's so much talent in this D line that if Oklahoma tries to double, triple team James Pierce, they're going to be in for a rude awakening. That's not going to be sustainable for very long.
I mean, NC State learned it.
Yep. I'm going to go 35-24 Tennessee. And I'll be honest, from my head, I feel like I'm underplaying. But maybe this is just some BVS flaring up. Where I don't want to predict a big blowout. But if I were a neutral, I would be predicting a far bigger spread.
Look, Tennessee minus 6.5 is easy money, in my view. And now, of course, if I go and bet it, we won't cover. But I think this game is going to be fairly close throughout. It's going to be within, a score or maybe 10 points. But I think at the end, Tennessee's going to pull away. A 15-point win is really not that many if you consider that pulling away at the end, scoring an extra touchdown. And so I'm with you, Nick. I think that it has a chance to become a very, very, very ugly game for Oklahoma. But at the same time, I'm not trying to disrespect the opponent. I think Tennessee should go in and it should be straightforward. But going on the road is never straightforward. And so, I said, 45-30. I feel like that's fair. But I'm hoping that I'm wrong, and I'm hoping that it's like 80-0. A complete beatdown would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
I also want to see Josh Heupel run the score up too. He won't, but I want him to.
Right, and I say that I think the key from an Oklahoma standpoint here is they have some talent on the outside, particularly with Deion Burks, and there's discussion whether or not their other big wide receiver Nick Anderson will be back, who has not played at all this year. And those guys are certainly talented. And if for whatever reason our secondary isn't as good as they've looked, and they can somehow give Jackson Arnold the time to get the ball down to those guys, that could be a way Oklahoma gets some big plays in this game. But that's a lot of ifs for Oklahoma that personally I'd rather be on my side of the equation here with Tennessee than be on their side of the equation. And also, too, if you look at their rushing attack, it hasn't been great for the first 3 weeks either, and partially because of that offensive line situation. They got to find a way to establish a running game, because if we make them one-dimensional and force Jackson Arnold to just go back and throw all the time, that's not, as you said, he's not Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, or Kyler Murray. That's not going to end well for him. So this is going to be a fascinating game. And I'll be completely transparent. It's all I've been thinking about all week. And it's going to be all I'll probably continue to think about all week until we get to this thing. Because as you said, this one feels different. It has that Alabama type energy to it. So we'll find out. We will be welcoming the Sooners to the SEC this week. So we'll see how it goes in Norman. But
hopefully the Sooners get a welcome to the SEC, kind of like you got a welcome to our Dynasty League.
Right. Well,
sorry about that, by the way.
To be fair, I'm starting further behind than Oklahoma is. So, hey, I got some chances for some wins coming up, I think. So, but in any case, yeah. If you don't know what he's referring to, so we have so I was invited to Jason's Dynasty Football League. This past offseason, I was replacing a former owner who was kicked out of the league. And basically, this previous owner was so bad at his job, he left me with literally nothing. I mean, I was left with the fantasy equivalent of the Carolina Panthers. About 6 or 7 players that legitimately I wanted, and the rest of the roster just complete. dumpster.
Yeah, and that sounds like a lot until you realize that the rosters are 35 players. So
yeah. This is not your traditional fantasy league. We have 15. It's 35. These are off-season rookie drafts. And I had no first-round picks this past year, so So safe to say, it's going to take a little while to get that roster built, but I think I've made good progress. And I just gotta be patient and stay the course. And obviously, I'm just not taking any results this year in the league personally, because I know I can't.
Sorry about the welcome to the league beatdown, Nick. Let me go in here and I'm gonna see what the score is, because the scoring is a little bit juiced. The scoring in this league is a little bit juiced. 190 to 200 points is a pretty good week. Over 200 is like a tremendous week. And then in week one, first week of Nick in the league, I won 205 to 136.
Yeah, so that's how far away.
Welcome to the league, and hopefully Oklahoma gets a similar welcome to the league on Saturday. Absolutely.
And I think like a third in area says trade me your picks, Nick. I need the picks. And like Nick Stringer too. If he'll show up, I'm sure he'll do.
Look, if Nick finds out he can reach you through here, Nick is like a car warranty. It's like a car warranty with Nick. They're always going to find a way to reach you about draft picks. Nick Stringer is. We love Nick to death. This man trades more than any three people.
Yeah, I mean the amount of trade, like it's fun. Let's just say this is a lot of fun though. Hopefully soon I can actually get into a position where I can actually start competing. But like Oklahoma, not now. So, in any case, I did want to jump to some other college football stuff, because we spent an hour and a half talking about the Vols, which, let's be real, the Vols are the only team that matter. But let's talk about all these other loser programs, like Georgia. Now, okay, Georgia
Just cut his mic real quick, Gus. Nick, stop talking. Loser program, Georgia. Period. End of story. Silence. Period. Thank you.
Right.
Continue.
Okay. Yeah. The only place they don't lose is the community football game inside the Athens Clark County Jail. But they did not lose at Kentucky the other night.
How many players have they had with like driving offenses? Because they're into the 20s at this point. They have to.
It has to be. Yeah.
This is comical at this point.
They certainly have had more people arrested than points they scored.
I think Kirby Smart next hire should not be a defensive coordinator, an offense coordinator. Should be a driver instructor.
No, just put a bunch of full-time drivers on staff and let these dudes not even drive. It's the same thing the Colts need to be doing with Jim Irsay. Just hire a full-time driver. No player gets to go anywhere by themselves. Ever.
I mean, those guys are being paid millions. I mean, like find a guy who'll drive you anywhere. Like that's you can find someone to do that.
Yeah. But even though they go fast on the road, they were not going fast in Kentucky. 13-12, and frankly, Kentucky gave them this game because Mark Stoops is an idiot, in my opinion. Like playing like an absolute wimp, punting on fourth down with less than 3 minutes to go. And I get it, he had the timeouts, and I get it.
I didn't hate that. I honestly didn't hate that because the defense had been playing well the whole game.
Yeah, but you're a 24-point underdog. No one expected you to be in this game. Like,
okay, well then, but you have a way better opportunity for a defensive stop when you have a 90-yard field than a defensive stop when you have a 40-yard field if you give the ball away on downs.
Yeah,
neither offense was really lighting up the scoreboard.
That is true because Kentucky has no offense. Because Brock Vandergriff is a bust.
I mean, there's a reason he's not at Georgia anymore.
Correct. Although Carson Beck was not much better on Saturday night. Now, it really is interesting because they lost Brock Bowers, they lost Lad McConkey among other players last year, and it really appears that seems to really have affected them a lot on the offensive side. Now, on the other end, I made a TikTok about this the other day. I'm not going to fall into the lull that all of a sudden this means Georgia is bad. Because 2 years ago, they went to Missouri, a team that finished 6-6 that year, trailed most of the game, and ended up only winning that 26-22. And I'll be honest, off of that one performance, I was like, okay, Georgia's really not that good. And especially when Tennessee started racking up wins over Alabama and blowing out Kentucky, blowing out LSU. I really was like, okay, Tennessee looks like the better team. I think we're going to run into Athens and we're going to roll. And obviously that didn't happen because that Georgia team showed up in the biggest games. And so far this year, in their biggest game against Clemson, they absolutely rolled 34-6. And next week they go to Alabama. I expect Georgia to look a whole lot better in Tuscaloosa than they did in Lexington. Because Kirby Smart teams, for whatever reason, play down the competition. They will barely survive, and then they're going to show up and win the big games. So until I actually start seeing them lose some of those games, I'm not falling for the Georgia trap.
And didn't Kentucky also put up kind of like a similar performance against a Georgia team? I think it was like, what, last year or something like that?
2022. Like they only lost 16-6.
Yeah. So literally 2 years ago in the same stadium, the game was kind of similar. It was like, oh, Kentucky hold Georgia. But I agree with you, Nick. This Kirby Smart team is the kind of team that struggles on those mid SEC tier games, but in the big spotlight, they show up. And
I will say this for go ahead.
And their only kryptonite with Alabama is when they played in the SEC championship in Atlanta. But outside of that, when they face off in Indy for the national title, they roll it. So maybe, I guess we now find out if the problem is play in the South or play in Atlanta.
Well, they did go to Tuscaloosa back in 2020 and lost then, too. So, obviously, they haven't won in Tuscaloosa in a long time. I think since, 2008. But, for Georgia, if I were a Georgia fan, the concern would be you have a lot of big games coming up. You got to go to Alabama. You go to Texas. Aaron, mentioned that on October 19th. They go to Ole Miss, and they've got Tennessee coming to Athens. So, basically, they play the other top 4 SEC teams this season. They don't have any room to be mediocre. Otherwise, they're going to – I find it really hard to believe they're going to go 4-0 in those games. But they have room because of the playoffs. So you can drop one of those. They could drop 2 of those and still make the playoffs. But I think with as hard as that schedule – because Georgia probably has, outside of Florida, maybe the hardest schedule in the country. But unlike Florida, Georgia should be able to at least absorb it and still win some of those. But obviously, they'll have to play a lot better. And I do think they will play a lot better on offense just because I think they have the talent. But clearly, they got to figure out how to deal with a post-Brock Bowers era. But in any case, speaking of what isn't salvageable, it's Billy Napier in Florida. Man, what a disaster the start of the season's been. First getting ran out of the stadium by Miami, but then getting ran out of the stadium by a backup quarterback from Texas A&M. And Marcel Rueda was 20-0. Things were so bad in Florida. They were booing Billy Napier's drunk driving ad. They were booing him during the ESPN interview. And then Billy Napier in the postgame said, if I were a fan, I would have booed me too.
Hey, at least he's self-aware. But listen, as much as I would love to laugh at Florida's misfortune here, I can't in good faith do so for one reason and one reason only. They're going to hire Alex Golesh, aren't they? You just know they are.
That's what I'm scared of. Because obviously people are talking about Lane Kiffin being the guy. And the timing isn't going to work because Ole Miss is going to be in the playoffs more than likely. I just don't think they're going to be able to have time to wait on Lane Kiffin.
Lane Kiffin is a snake, but he's not Jim Schlossnagle level of snake. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and he would be stupid to leave Ole Miss for Florida. He would not make the same mistake of, leaving a a program where he is beloved and betrayed again to go to a big kind of brand and get screwed over by.
Yeah, and in retrospect, obviously when I was I was like 11 years old when he left Tennessee for USC in the middle of the night. So obviously I was hurt. I held it against him for a long time. But as an adult, I understand USC was his dream school. If I were the USC head coach of Tennessee came calling, I would leave to go to Knoxville. Like I get it. But I think, as you said, Gus, I think he learned from that experience, and I think he's happy at Ole Miss. I think he's going to stay there, especially not to go to Florida, because he sees the pressure that job has. I think he's happy being kind of like the wonky guy. Like think about some of the antics Lane Kiffin does. They work at Ole Miss because they don't have as high of expectations. But think about the popcorn thing a couple years ago at Alabama. That wouldn't fly at Florida, and then you lose by 35. It's like Mike Leach. Mike Leach did all kinds of wild stuff, but he was at Texas Tech and Washington State and Mississippi State, and could get away with it, even when they did lose some games here and there. So, but yeah, circling back to what Jason said. To the crib, Aaron. We are going to the crib. But anyway, Florida's not going to the crib, but they would be potentially if they go to Alex Golesh. And I was thinking when I was watching them play Alabama, I was thinking, man, this guy is probably going to be at a P4 job next year. And then it dawned on me,
it's going to be Florida.
Yeah. And talk about how crazy Florida Tennessee would become. Because it literally be student versus master. It'd be the next Kirby versus Saban. But it'd be Heupel versus Golesh. And man,
it hurts. It hurts to think about.
Yeah. I don't know how Alabama fans got used to it because Saban was or Kirby was their guy for such a long time and then became their rival. And Golesh, if they go there, if he goes there, then Golesh runs the same exact offense. I mean, could you imagine some of the scores of Golesh versus Heupel? Just the amount of plays that would be ran.
That's a Big 12 score.
Yeah. Granted, Heupel actually has a defense now. I mean, not get that twisted. If Golesh took over right now, I mean, Heupel would run over him with the talent difference. But Golesh would actually be able to recruit the state of Florida, which Billy Napier is unable to do. And especially if Golesh kept DJ Lagway, who I think has a lot of potential to be a good quarterback. I know he didn't look good this week, but man, he's a true freshman, and he's in a dumpster fire situation. I think you got to give him some time to develop with more talent because Florida just doesn't have the talent right now, and that's what's alarming. I mean, Florida should never be in a position where they don't have talent. You are literally in the either the most or second most talent-laden state in the country. Whether you
and you have a good NIL collective and everything, and circling back around. It's crazy how spending money wisely works out when you have NIL money.
Yeah, but even then, Florida really has had a disastrous NIL situation. Because, I mean, you saw the situation with Jalen Rashada, how that resulted in a federal lawsuit. And it's just man, because Florida's got to fix all that first before then they go into
and see, Tennessee's running the show with NIL, doing very well with it and building up to it. This is why you get out in front of it, boys and girls.
Yeah. So I was going to ask who should be the next Gators coach, and I think Golesh is, man, that'd be such a good hire for them. And
I would hate it, but I would hate it, but I would love it for Golesh.
Yeah. I mean, a small part of me would be rooting for him just as an individual coach, but man, I couldn't root for his program at Florida. And man, Florida, Tennessee, those would be just some crazy games. And once again, there is no excuse for Tennessee to fool around or lose to Florida this year in Neyland. I know we're cursed against them, but it shouldn't be a contest. So please, Tennessee, don't mess around with Florida in a couple of weeks. We'll get to that when we get to that. Some other brief things. South Carolina LSU was probably the wackiest game of the week. I mean, South Carolina, their quarterback Lenora Sellers goes down at halftime. They were up by 17 at halftime. It was nuts. Like, it was shocking watching South Carolina boat race LSU in the first half. But then LSU clawed their way back in and controversially got some calls in their favor and ended up winning in the last minute. And Carolina fans still contest. I need to again yell from Rocky Top, where are we going? To the crib. I still feel like I need to work on that. But anyway.
You do. You'll get used to it.
Yeah, it's awkward doing it in a podcast, especially. But
to the crib. There you go.
There you go. I guess he has to be playing CFB 25 all listening to us.
Hey, I mean, felt. I mean, so am I. Let's.
Absolutely. I'm just too focused on the Google Docs and stuff to play the video game at the same time.
Yeah, this is. Yeah, where am I going, Nick? Going
to the
75
crew.
yards. Look, I gotta stay loose. I'm happy to stay loose and just give you my thoughts while I'm putting a beat down on Kansas State in the playoff.
Absolutely. Which, hey, might actually happen this year because Kansas State could be there. Maybe. We'll see.
Louisville's not good enough to make the playoff, I don't think, or do well in the playoff at least. Look, I'm pretty down on Louisville. I think Louisville's good, but not great. And I think, I don't know. I was more concerned a couple weeks ago for Louisville versus Jacksonville State than I was for Tennessee versus NC State. So that tells you how I feel about it. I think I'm very cautious about Louisville. Very cautious.
That's one of the 5, and I guess while we're on the topic, that's one of the 5 games we're going to have us pick Georgia Tech versus Louisville. And just kind of talk about what you've seen, because I've heard some folks talk about how they think Louisville's super underrated. Now, I haven't watched Louisville play yet, because they played like Louisville, Austin Peay and Jacksonville State. I have not watched them, but I'm going to try to at least see a little bit of this Georgia Tech game. Do you think that Braun has improved the team here?
Oh, 100%. I mean, the bar was not very high. But Jeff Brom is a good coach. This team is a good football team. I don't know that I'd call them great, but Louisville's pretty good. I think we should beat Georgia Tech. Excuse me. But Georgia Tech is sneaky good as well. So I think this is going to be a closer game. Again, I'm more concerned about Louisville this week than I am about Tennessee. I think Louisville, is going to be a 1-score game probably throughout, and I think Tennessee wins by multiple scores. Even against a top tier opponent. Louisville is underrated, but I don't think it's by much. I think a lot of people are starting to understand. Okay, this team's solid. It's not great, but solid. Got some pieces here and there, and Jeff Brom does pretty well recruiting, and Tyler Shuck is only in his 37th season playing college football. So, we'll see if he can play a good quarterback.
Yeah, I think I have y'all win this by 10. I mean, Georgia Tech's a decent team, but I do think Louisville is a bit ahead, and especially with this being in Louisville, I like the Cards to get this, especially before you guys head up to Notre Dame next week, which will be a huge game for Louisville. All right, circling back to South Carolina real quick. I don't think South Carolina got robbed by the refs. You can't blindside block a quarterback on an interception return. I mean, South Carolina just played really stupid in this game. Completely undisciplined. And it's a reflection of their coach, Shane Beamer, who's a goofball, a clown, and his team plays like it. So, sorry, South Carolina, but you blew your opportunity with College Game Day. And, you'll be irrelevant the rest of the season. So, congratulations on that. I've already mentioned Miss State and Vandy and their disasters. And I don't know. Miss State's not winning a single SEC because Mississippi State's 4 SEC games on the road this year are Texas, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Georgia. I mean, man, just a disaster for and they also get Missouri at home. So, man, Miss State's going to be terrible. They may only win one more game the rest of the year. Also, shout out to Colorado. They did beat Colorado State, but they did the bare minimum. But Shedeur Sanders created more controversy after the game by not shaking the hand of the Colorado State QB. I think his name is Braden Fowler Nicolosi, because he was mad at Nicolosi for talking trash to him online and said, "Oh, don't switch up now! Don't switch up now!"
Oh, get the blank out of here! I'm so sick of Colorado. And what's hilarious is how Deion Sanders and family have turned that team from America's underdog story to the most hated villain in like 3 weeks last season.
Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, like, you're trying to talk trash to a dude in the Mountain West, man. Come on, what are we doing here?
You remember the comment I made about the lion doesn't concern himself with the opinion of sheep?
Mm.
I think Shador Sanders doesn't realize that he's supposed to be a lion, but
yeah,
he acts like he should be, and then turns around and acts like he should be the sheep. So,
like, I feel bad for Travis Hunter because, like, I feel like he's actually trying to do it the right way, but like,
100%.
He's surrounded in a circus. So, and like, but he chose to be there, and like, he literally could have gone anywhere else, and anyone would have wanted him. So,
did you see? Speaking of going anywhere else, did you see what's his name, the lineman, looking so mad at the press conference the other day? The guy that should have gone to Tennessee.
Yeah.
He's in that picture. It looked like he's like, oh crap, I should have gone to Tennessee,
or go to Ohio State. Like, you could have gone to a legitimate program, but you went to Colorado. Like, he wanted to play for somebody that looks like him. It's just ridiculous.
If you wanted to play for somebody that looked like you, do it under a good coach.
But we discussed that last week, Jason. The thing with Colorado is before Deion Sanders came in, they were really terrible, 1-11, and then they got better. They were the spotlight, but everybody knew this is a shotgun wedding, and they're gonna leave next week, in my opinion. Next year, next season. I don't think, as we discussed in this podcast, when Shador Sanders goes to the NFL, he's leaving Colorado.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm with that. And I think Deion Sanders was mad he didn't get the Florida State job. And my goodness, I don't know if they'd have been worse under Norvell or under Deion at this point.
Absolutely. All right, so just two quick other reactions I just quickly had. Just broadly speaking, one, I think Neil Brown, the West Virginia head coach, sealed his fate this week, blowing a 10-point lead late to Pittsburgh in the backyard brawl. That's a loss that I don't think. But West Virginia fans,
that's unforgivable for people that don't understand. That's a big rivalry.
Yeah, like those people aren't going to forgive him for that. It's over for Neil Brown, unless he comes back and wins the Big 12 somehow, which I don't think is going to happen for him. Also, I think perhaps the biggest single win of the week last week, Washington State going on the road to Seattle, taking down the Huskies after the Huskies frankly left them for dead last year without a conference. I mean, that's just such a huge program win for Washington State. And maybe down the road, they can get themselves back into a big conference because, the Pac-12 announced this past week they're going to add 4 teams from the Mountain West to get back up to at least 6 teams. And they're probably just going to end up becoming just the Mountain West with Oregon State and Washington State. But, at the very least, Washington State got to show their big brother a big middle finger on their home turf. So, I mean, I think it's a huge one for.
But I saw the rumors that Pac-12 might add 2 programs from the AAC, and one of that is Memphis.
Memphis is so desperate to be in a big program. They're so desperate to compete with Tennessee. Because I know people in Memphis, and people in Memphis will talk about Tennessee ad nauseum like they're a rival, but no one in Vol Nation cares about Memphis.
The most we talked about Memphis was when we called their basketball coach, who was a Penny Hardaway, a wuss
Yeah.
for backing out of the COVID game. And that's the extent of it. That's the extent of the whole rivalry, is thinking that he was kind of a bitch for backing out of that game.
Yeah, and we should be playing them every year in basketball for what it's worth. But like in football, come on, Memphis does not have football history to even remotely compare to Tennessee. So the fact that they think that they should be in the same conference is insane. Aaron says switch Memphis for Vandy. Now, I do think Memphis would be more competitive than Vanderbilt, but still, and at least Memphis fans would actually show up at home. Maybe it wouldn't be 100% orange like it is when we go to Vandy.
Look, there are more Tennessee fans in Davidson County than Vanderbilt fans in existence. So
now, I still think there are more Tennessee fans in Shelby County too than there are Memphis fans, but I do think it's a little bit closer percentage-wise. Although I can't, the mental gymnastics of choosing Memphis football over like Tennessee, or even remember, Ole Miss is way closer to Memphis than Tennessee is.
even Mississippi State is closer.
Yeah. So the mental gymnastics of choosing
By a significant amount.
The mental gymnastics of choosing a G5 team over SEC.
Three different SEC schools.
But, I mean, shout out to Memphis, though. They did get a pretty big win for them last week over 0-3 Florida State. I mean, man, disaster. I mean, this has to be the biggest collapse.
Nick, I gotta pause real quick because we have I have a quick ad read for the pod. This podcast is brought to you by the letter L.
Yes. 3 of them, in fact. 3 of them for quarterback DJ Ujalele. At this point, does Florida State win a game? How many games can they win?
And at this point, I might add, is DJ Ugalele the biggest bust in college football history?
He's one of them. He's definitely
up there.
I mean, going to 3 different schools, you getting kicked out of one in Clemson, leaving one because the program disintegrated in Oregon State, and then going to Florida State and just completely just tanking. I mean, this dude is horrible. Horrible.
And how bad does Mike Norvell have to feel that he ran off Tate Rodemaker for this bum? Yeah.
And like the fact that Mike Norvell has been there for 5 years and doesn't have any quarterback he recruited that's better. Aaron Young says Tate Martell's probably the ultimate bust. Because that dude bounced around from like Miami to Ohio State, and he ended up at low school.
I'd put Harrison Bailey up in that as well. I don't think he's on top of Tate Martell. Yeah, Guantanamo was bad. Harrison Bailey, was a bum at Tennessee. Then he was a bum at UNLV. Then he rode the bench at Louisville.
But my point, I think DJ Ugalele was worse because he was highly, he came out of high school as a 5-star, and people.
He was the number 2 quarterback in the class.
Yeah,
so.
Like Harrison Bailey and Jared Garantano were highly, ranked.
They were both 4 stars.
Yeah.
Also, really quick, Nick, I did search. Arkansas is also closer to Memphis than Knoxville is. By the way, you have You got 3 different SEC programs all closer to you than Tennessee, and you still choose to root for Memphis. That's crazy.
Yeah. It really is nuts. It's little brother syndrome for Memphis. But hey, at least their program got a big win, and now at 3-0, like Memphis has a shot at the playoff, potentially. Although I still think if I had to choose right now, I think Northern Illinois would deserve that spot because they have the most impressive win, and that's what ultimately I think it's good. These G5 spots are going to come down to is one, who ends up undefeated or closest to undefeated at the end of the year / what's your best win. Because I think, in terms of the eye test, to me, Boise State looks like they're the best team, but they didn't get the win at Oregon, like Northern Illinois got Notre Dame, or Memphis got at Florida State, or UNLV got at Kansas and Houston.
So. Sorry, I'm just admiring how this guy was the number 2 player in the country, only behind Bryce Young. I'm sorry, that's terrible.
At
Sorry,
least
I'm
Bryce
going
Young
back
made
to.
the NFL. Although
I mean, look,
that also,
Bryce Young is a victim of the Carolina Panthers. He goes anywhere else, he's a success. So
yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But
But
in any
but but
case,
but but Bryce Young succeeded in college. He was a really really good quarterback.
yeah.
Um, but DJ didn't. I mean, I don't think he's gonna go to any NFL team. Maybe a practice squad.
Look, Guantanamo made it to the Arizona Cardinals because somebody thought they could fix him. I have, which also I want it known. I made the comment on Rock Solid Sports is another one of my apparently hot takes that Jarrett Garantano would make the NFL because somebody thinks they can fix him, and I got laughed at. But here we are again. Once again, I was right. Crazy how that works. Got to take a victory lap on a couple idiots real quick. But all I
right.
look, I was right. I'm sorry. I was right. I was right about him. I was right about Harrison Bailey not being good. I was right about Hendon Hooker being the best quarterback on the team. Crazy.
Right, and then in a little bit here in the NFL, you're gonna be right once again on a certain quarterback for the Tennessee Titans who is absolutely horrific. But granted, I was there with you, like when that pick was drafted because I didn't understand it then, didn't understand it now. But anyway, okay, so, okay, getting the train back on the track, a little bit. All right, looking at these week's games, so upset alert, and I've got one upset alert for you right here, right now. James Madison is going to beat North Carolina on Saturday.
I could see it. I wouldn't bet on that, but I could see it.
Yeah, that would be my upset alert of the week.
My upset alert, Nebraska. My upset alert, NC State beating Clemson in Clemson.
I don't see it. They're on their backup quarterback right now. Clemson did appear to have a pulse against App State, so I do think Clemson's going to beat NC State, but it's certainly going to be interesting. Also, if you want to technically count as an upset, the California Golden Bears, who, by the way, their Twitter fan base is hilarious. It might be the funniest Twitter fan base, the California Golden Bears.
Did you? Speaking of the fans, I ended up watching their game. Apparently, their fans were throwing stuff off the field, and their coach had to go to the referee's microphone and beg for fans stop throwing things at the field because they were getting punished for unsportsmanlike conduct.
I totally missed that this happened. How did I miss that?
I thought it would make a bigger. I only caught
it was
because
hilarious, Nick.
I only saw that because I couldn't sleep, and on Saturday night there's always a late game. I guess not Pac-12 after dark anymore, so I guess it's ACC after dark. But any case, I was watching and it was hilarious.
Right, but if you look at their Twitter online fan base, though, especially after they beat Auburn, they said you just got beat by a woke university, and this week they're tweeting at Florida State fans they need to rename the Seminoles to the Manatees, but they're doing it out of trolling, saying that we're gonna rename Doak Campbell Stadium to Woke Campbell Stadium. Because leaning into the fact that everyone thinks that everyone at Cal Berkeley is a super left winger, which is just hilarious. But they are 3-0, the Cal Golden Bears, with their main win being at Auburn, a terrible SEC team, going to the 0-3 Florida State Seminoles. And Florida State somehow is still a 2-point favorite in this game.
I'm sorry, I can't find. Florida State is bad. They are booty cheeks.
Yeah. I'm going to say I think Cal beats them.
I don't think there's a question there.
Yeah. Now, in terms of underrated game, and I'm not saying this is going to be underrated because it's a good game, but if you want to see an absolute depravity of football, and maybe if you want to find a game that may destroy your love for the sport, I present to you Florida at Mississippi State at
Oh,
noon. I mean, I will be watching this game because it shall be one
oh
of the
boy.
funniest football games I've ever seen. I mean, like, I don't even know who's going to win that game because both of those teams are bad. I mean, I think Florida's the better team probably, but man, like, neither one of those teams are going to have any confidence. Yeah. But in terms of another game that actually, is underrated because go ahead.
No, and my ad tickets are going for $50. I mean, why? Like, I guess maybe Starksville doesn't have much stuff to do, so people go. I would have paid. I would have definitely.
I mean,
Auburn,
I can guarantee you that's correct.
Auburn, Arkansas, Auburn going is a way better game to watch than Florida Mississippi State. And
I would agree with
and
that.
and tickets for that game is going for $13. So way better deal.
Really, for Auburn, it's only 13. That's insane.
Yeah.
I think two other games are interesting to me. Kansas at West Virginia, because both of those teams have had really disappointing starts, and whoever loses that game is in for just a horrible season. So I'll be curious to see which team saves themselves this season with that game. Also, in terms of a G5 game that could be sneaky entertaining on ESPN Plus, if you're really going deep into the weeds, Toledo at Western Kentucky. I think that could be a really interesting football game. And it could be a really high-scoring, entertaining one as well, because Western Kentucky is better than Mississippi State. So,
Not saying much again, but
yeah. All right, let's go into some picks. All right, we already picked Georgia Tech, Louisville. Miami at South Florida. This one's interesting because we talked about Golish a little bit earlier. He gets Miami at home. Do the Bulls have any shot pulling off this upset?
I mean, they looked competent against Alabama. Why wouldn't they look competent anywhere else?
Very true. Would anyone pick USF to win this game?
No.
I think they're going to be close, but Miami still wins it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Illinois, Nebraska, and Aaron mentioned this in the comments. Illinois versus Nebraska being a ranked versus ranked game was one of my bingo card at the beginning of the season. Would agree with that. This feels crazy. This is also a Friday night game as well. This game is in Lincoln. Who do we have in this game in Illinois on the road at Nebraska?
Big game for Matt Rule. If wins it, showing that they can be kind of threatening the season and, keeping their undefeated season alive.
I'd agree with that. Dylan Raiola, man, as a true freshman, that guy is so good. People just call him a Patrick Mahomes copycat, but like every athlete looks up to somebody. And Raiola just looks up to Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, I thought he said he looked up to Tebow.
Tebow and then Mahomes. But anyway, but he's a super fun player to watch. I do like the Cornhuskers to win in that game. A Big 12 showdown in Stillwater. A lot of Oklahoma State fans mad that College Game Day is not there, screaming about SEC bias because obviously they're still butthurt that Oklahoma ditched them. But Utah, will they have Cam Rising or not? That's the big question. Going to Oklahoma State. Who do we have here?
Give me Utah, with or without Cam Rising.
Give me Oklahoma State.
Man, I'll be real. If they have Cam Rising, I'd pick Utah. But man, I just don't trust Utah without Cam Rising. I guess I'm going to go Utah just so I don't have a split pick. Because Oklahoma State's undisciplined and they gave up 650 yards to Arkansas 2 weeks ago and got bailed out by a bunch of turnovers. All right, and in my non-Vols game of the week, because obviously Tennessee is the game of the week versus Oklahoma, USC making their Big Ten debut on the road at Michigan. And Michigan announced today that they are switching quarterbacks. Alex Orji will be the starting quarterback for Michigan this week. They are ditching Davis Warren and attempt to jumpstart that offense. Does it work for the Wolverines?
No. No, it doesn't. Give me USC by 50.
USC by 20.
Yeah, I like USC by 3 touchdowns. Alex who? Yep, Alex Orji. Orji. That's how you spell his name. And then, yes, that's how it's pronounced. But
I feel like Mater in Cars. He did what in his cup?
Right, but it's not the fun type. So
I guess we can't hear. Oh, Nick is muted. Nick, yeah, I think you muted.
yeah, just had a little bit of an issue there. But anyway, yeah, so that's college football, all 2 hours of college football. So let's go into some NFL. I don't have as much to talk about NFL because, as Jason can attest and I attest, we probably don't really want to talk about NFL as much because it has not been a fun start for either one of our teams. Starting off 0-2 for the Titans.
I mean, my team got the W.
Well, more like Will Levis gave you the W. But, in any case, I already went on a massive Will Levis rant last week. I don't want to repeat it because basically you could copy and paste my rant about Will Levis in last week's episode to this week's episode, and it all be relevant again with the stupid plays, stupid turnovers. I mean, well, like, what is he doing? Rolling out, trying to pitch it off to the running back, no competent NFL quarterback is throwing the ball anywhere when they're falling down. Like, you just got to eat it. You got to learn to take the points, and just I just can't with this guy, especially considering that we could have had Hendon Hooker. My leash with Levis was going to be short anyway because of that fact, and that leash is already gone. So, if it sounds like I'm rooting against Levis, it's because I kind of am. And it doesn't help that this week, Green Bay's coming to town with Malik Willis, who just won his opener with the Packers. And actually threw his first touchdown as a Packer. Like, he never threw a touchdown with Tennessee, and I know it was against your Colts, Jason. But, man, if Malik Willis beats the Titans in Nashville, I want someone fired, to say the least. Now, granted, we've already fired our head coach but from last year, but, man, it feels like someone else would have to be fired, man. Like, I don't know. But
can you fire John Robinson again?
Yeah. Now, granted, Rand Crawford made this decision with Will Levis. So I'm close to calling for his head. Granted, defense seems to be improved. And honestly, other elements of this team seem improved as well. It's just we don't have a quarterback. And no matter how good the other elements are, if you don't have a quarterback to make it all go, then the team's going to just – you're not going to do anything. And it's just – at least to me, it feels like at least your team, the Colts, have an area that says wish the Colts could say the same. And I know you guys are down right now on AR and the team, because to me, I would still much rather have Richardson than Levis. Although Richardson,
but that's not saying much.
Yeah, I was kind of stunned at how the game went. Because in week 1, Richardson played well. And then last week he didn't. But in your view, because to me the biggest problem with the Titans is Levis. Point blank, if he just makes smarter decisions, the Titans could be at least 1-1, if not 2-0. because the defense has been playing lights out. Running game is halfway decent, and we've made some big plays in the passing game. Like look at this week, the big play downfield to Calvin Ridley, but it's the mistakes by a bonehead quarterback that are keeping us from winning games.
I understand your frustration, Nick, and definitely, he showed signs that he could be a good quarterback, and I guess he's not up to the task. But the Titans were going for a rebuild, like they're not gonna be a title contender or even a division contender or even a wild card contender.
Well, I
But
mean, it wouldn't be so frustrating if it didn't look like the rest of the team was much improved, which the defense especially looks improved. In my view, for 2 games, they look improved. It feels like the Titans are closer than they were a year ago as a team, but because of a bonehead decision at quarterback, they are where they are. Going against the Jets, I mean, they played pretty well against Aaron Rodgers. Now, Aaron Rodgers clearly is not the same quarterback he was, a couple of years ago. But, they held him in check. They did what you were supposed to do. And eventually, he made some plays. Rodgers made some plays to win the game, but you can't keep on giving a guy like Aaron Rodgers that many opportunities because your offense can't do anything. So, just sucks. And honestly, I swear, like, I am very concerned they're losing to Malik Willis this week. Like, because that would be just the most full circle loss possible for the Tennessee Titans.
yeah, it would be definitely a very, very painful loss because of how Malik was ran out of the building.
Yeah, because he couldn't complete a pass in Tennessee, and now he's winning games. I don't understand how that's even possible. I don't know. Times are just frustrating, and especially when you juxtapose them to the Vols, it's even worse. Going from excitement on Saturday to just puzzling frustration on Sunday. Speaking of puzzling frustration, the Eagles. Man, Eagles fans are furious today after blowing a last-second lead to the Atlanta Falcons, and their fans want Nick Sirianni fired. But
hey, please fire him. Bring him home. Come home, King.
Yeah. So the Colts want Nick Sirianni back, but the
hell
Eagles
yeah,
don't.
bring him home.
Yeah, man, I don't understand why they were throwing the ball that late. And granted, it's Saquon Barkley's job to catch the ball in that situation. But man, the play call made no sense. And their defense just completely disappeared in that last drive against Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins is notorious for not winning on Monday night, but he got it done here. So
I
certainly going
laughed.
to be interesting to see how it. Yeah,
that's all I can do. Laugh.
Very much laughed as well. See, also, I think some of the other key takeaways from the NFL this week. Caleb Williams and the Bears, man, they have a long way to go. That offensive line is not bad. In fact, if you look at advanced stats, on 37 Caleb Williams dropbacks this week, he was only not pressured once.
I wanna say something real quick. I never want to hear him be proclaimed to be better than Andrew Luck ever again. Because Andrew Luck had similar stats on his dropbacks and he still was winning games.
Right. And that's the thing we were sold on Caleb Williams is that he was able to run around and extend plays and able to overcome a bad offensive line. And we're just not seeing it with him at all. Like, it's painful to watch the Bears offense. It is. Like, they are not good. At least the Titans have scored offensive touchdowns this year, even with the boneheaded turnovers by Will Levis that prevented us from winning games. At least the Titans are more watchable than the Bears.
So you are officially out on Will Levis.
I am, yes.
Well,
Because
I won't pile on and say I told you so, but you know.
well, look, I was not a fan of the pick. I only haphazardly I was like, look, I'm going to give the dude a chance. I was impressed with what I saw in the opener.
You just
I'm
gave
like,
him a
all right.
chance to disappoint you.
Yeah, basically that. But like, I had no choice. I felt like I had to give him the reasonable doubt because I've been wrong on quarterbacks so many times. So, I thought Josh Allen would be a bust. I thought Herbert would be a bust. I'm like, okay, maybe, by thinking Will Levis is a bust, maybe he'll actually turn to be good. And I know technically it's not over for him. He's not getting benched this week, at least not yet. But yeah, I don't know how much more rope he has with Brian Callahan, because clearly Callahan is furious with him. You gotta remember, Callahan didn't draft this guy. He's just got hired here to try to fix him. And if he keeps on doing stuff like that, Callahan is going to bench him. Because eventually it's your job or mine. And, Callahan's going to choose his job. So, and for me, when it comes to Callahan for 2 games, I don't know really what to make of him as a coach, because I will say, like, the team, it has been, well, not more fun necessarily. They do appear more competent than the end of Vrabel last year. But I don't know. But we'll say, in terms of teams that do look good, we've been spending a lot of time talking about teams that look bad. The Cardinals. The Cardinals looked really good Saturday. And Kyler Murray looks like he's back.
Marvin Harrison Jr. looks real good, too.
Yeah. I mean, that connection looks special. If Kyler Murray can stay healthy, man, the Cardinals, man, that's a fun team. Because remember, they almost won Week 1 in Buffalo. And, I mean, Murray made one for on the run. That was just nuts. And I'm just like, yeah, that's why I loved watching him back 4 or 5 years ago. And that's why the Cardinals haven't given up on him. So, yeah. So that's the team. Also, the Saints blowing out the Cowboys in Dallas.
Oh, Cowboys. Maybe their reality check came earlier, I guess.
Right.
That was a reality check.
Right, because people were talking about them being Super Bowl contenders after being the Browns. No. Let's pump the brakes on that. They've got a long, long way to go. The Saints, I don't know about the Saints. Can they keep this up for a full season? It's 17 games. It's a long way to go, but man, they look good so far. Derek Carr looks like he's in the best form we've seen in years from him. So,
have you guys seen the Derek Carr election year stats?
Yeah, I have. Election year Derek Carr is like tragic event Nick Castellanos. So, if it's an election year, go with Derek Carr and the Saints. And basically, guys, what we mean is, if you look at his best 2 years up to this point is 2016 and 2020. What do those 2 years have in common? They're both election years.
I get, but in one of those years he met me, so I also gave him a lucky charm.
That's true.
8 years ago, exactly 8 years and 1 week. In 1 week, 8 years ago, me and him ran into each other, and he was amazing. So that's why I remember that season, because we had a very good exchange at Nissan Stadium.
Yeah. One other game I guess it was really good was Bengals and the Bengals Chiefs, of course. I mean, those games are always tight. And the Chiefs were able to pull out a close win, 25-23. The Bengals, they really struggled week 1, but they looked a lot better even in the loss. And I still think they're in a good spot in the AFC North, given that the Ravens have not looked very good through the early part of the season so far. Of course, the Browns don't look like they have an offense at all. And the Steelers are 2-0, but once again, kind of like the Browns.
How many games until Jameis is the quarterback for Cleveland?
it's got to be like 5 or 6 at least. I mean, if not sooner, because I mean, I don't know how, because like it's not even like Deshaun Watson is just bad. He's extremely unpopular and bad. You know, eventually like going into jail and bad. So I don't know. I'll say this: at least Will Levis is not Deshaun Watson in terms of off the field.
I don't know. He's a criminal with the mayo and coffee, but he's not at least a criminal of that nature.
And also, Will Levis is not costing anything compared to what Deshaun Watson is costing for the Browns in terms of contract.
That's true. He's on
and draft picks that they traded for him.
Yeah.
Right. At the very least, the one thing I'll always be glad with Levis is we didn't waste a first-round pick on him. At least it was just a second round.
It's one thing to roll the dice in a young quarterback on the second round. Okay, you roll the dice and didn't work out. Okay, you can find another one in the draft or find But the Browns literally got a mortgage. They mortgaged their future on Deshaun Watson, and the house is burning down, and they look like they don't have any insurance.
And I just have to be honest when it comes to Levis. I do sometimes wonder, am I being too hard on him just because I really wanted Hendon Hooker instead? Like, am I not giving him enough of a chance as a quarterback? That is true, Aaron. That is very true. But at the very least, that was consensual. Listen, I think
podcast after dark is not necessarily PG-13.
Right. What do you think about that, Jason? Because like, I have wondered to myself, do I not? Am I being unfair to Levis? Because I feel like. That just from a personal standpoint, I haven't disliked a quarterback this much since at least Jared Garantano. And it's like, if Hendon Hooker wasn't in that class, would I hate Will Levis like this?
I mean, that's hard because he already was not good. He was already a dislikable type of guy. And he's just I just sit back and laugh. You remember when people said he should be a top 5 draft pick?
Yeah.
It's just comical. But the point that I made on ESPN Louisville, because I actually had this discussion on the Kentucky show, was he was coming back for his senior year, and the point that I made to host James Strebel was, look, if he was supposed to be this number 1 first round grade type of quarterback, why would he not go in the class whose number 1 quarterback was the guy that's in Pittsburgh now, or the guy that was in Pittsburgh?
Kenny Pickett.
Kenny Pickett, that's the one. Why would he not go in the weak class that had Kenny Pickett? Why would he wait for the loaded class that had Bryce Young and CJ Stroud in it? If you're actually that good, you go pro. You don't stay back. And Strebel had nothing to say because he knew I was right. He's a bum. He was always a bum. And it was laughable that people thought he was going to go in the first round. And he didn't go in the first round. And people realized, oh, yeah, Jason knows what he's talking about. But I really have a vendetta against a couple of people that always thought I was wrong, if you can't tell. But I it's hard because on one hand, he's just a dislikable guy. He's kind of a cocky bitch, and he's not a good quarterback. And he went to a rival school, and your guy didn't get drafted. It's an amalgamation of circumstances. I don't think you'd hate him quite this much, but I think you'd still dislike him a bunch.
Right. Like, I honestly, like, if it wasn't for all of that, like, I still think there'd be a part of me like, okay, if you could just count the mistakes, maybe there's a shot. But because I just, in the back of my head, I'm like, Hendon Hooker would be 2-0 right now. I mean, that's what's pushing me over the edge. And the fact that's what's pushing me to almost root against the Titans. And I feel like I'm rooting for the Titans to win.
Do
but
it.
Like,
root against the Titans. Do it.
And it's just like, man, But like I look at the situation, like you can't really tank for a quarterback this year because the class next year is, to me, it's not great. When you have Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, Shador Sanders, so I'm not sold on any three of those in the NFL. But the year after, a certain guy in Knoxville should be in the draft. The year after that,
Tank for Nico, tank for Arch Manning.
Yeah, tank for Nico. I'll take either one of those two. Tank Arch Manning, tank for Nico. Make this a 2-year tank. At this point. Yeah, Dart. Well, I don't know. I'm not as high on Dart, but
no, Dart sucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean Dart's been good. Dart's a good college quarterback, but I don't know. But anyway, as I said, I've spent enough time ranting and complaining about Will Levis. I'm sorry note though. The Tua Tagovailoa situation, because it happened last Thursday. He gets a concussion. He's now on IR for at least 4 weeks, and there's people calling for him to retire because of this and the multiple concussions he's had over the years. And I think, frankly, they're right. I hope Tua takes a step back and thinks about the fact that he's only in his early 20s right now, and if he takes care of himself now, he could live a long, long life. But if he goes back out on that football field and continues suffering his concussions over and over again, that
he's going to be on CT ESPN in the next couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of someone like a Junior Seau.
Yeah.
What happened?
He's a great example.
And that's I don't want him to go down that same road. I mean, I don't care if they just signed a $255 million contract. That ain't worth cutting your life short by 40 years. And not getting to enjoy having a family and all that. So I hope Tua makes a reasonable decision. And really, honestly, just expanding beyond that, doesn't it feel like there's more injuries this year, just in general? Like the IR list, when you look at like CMC, Deebo Samuel, Puka Nacua, there's just guys all over the place on IR. I mean, it's just nuts. The past few years have been like this, especially early on. And I see some people making the claim that, is it because the lack of preseason that we're seeing more injury? Yeah, if the case,
maybe the game is true. Maybe the game got rougher.
I don't think it's more rough than it has been. Like football's always a very rough sport, but maybe there is something to the not preseason. I don't know. It's weird how many injuries there are now compared to what we saw in the past. All right, real quick. So we like to go through all the NFL games and pick them here for week 3. So starting off on Thursday Night Football, we got the New England Patriots at the New York Jets.
Oh, Jets.
Why would that's cruel and unusual punishment.
I think it'll be a good game, honestly. To an extent, it'll be a low scoring game. I think it'll be close. I'll take the Jets though. All right,
I'll take the Jets
Sam.
also, but that's a terrible football game.
Yeah, Ariana says booty cheeks. We'll probably be playing college football 25 instead. All right, Packers at the Titans. Malik Willis returns to Nashville.
You don't want to know my pick.
Yeah. I probably have the same pick because I'm going with the Packers.
Give me the Titans.
Packers.
Yeah. Because Matt LaFleur is a much better coach, and he'll find a way to get it done. And Will Levis will probably have a low IQ moment once again that will lose us the game. The Giants at the Browns.
Give me the Browns.
Giants.
Yeah, I'm going to go Browns with it being a home game. That's going to be a terrible football game. All right. The I-65 Bowl, a rematch of Super Bowl 40? I think Bears at Colts.
41.
41. I was close. I'm gonna go. I'll go Colts at home.
There's not an option where we both lose, but both teams are going to deserve to lose. Give me the Colts in a dreadfully bad football game.
And just
Colts.
real quick, like, what would you say? What would you say is the biggest problem for the Colts?
Everything. There is no biggest problem. They're all the biggest problem. Except the O-line. The O-line's good. JT is good. Other than that, it's everything.
Like, do you think it's so bad that it could get Chris Ballard fired?
Yes. And it should, probably. And you know how much I like Chris Ballard, but questions need to be asked. He's had multiple years to get this shit figured out, and he hasn't. So.
Wow. All right, 1 p.m. An undefeated matchup here in Minneapolis. Texans at Vikings.
Give me Vikings.
Texans.
I'm going Texans, but Sam Darnold, he looks good with in the Kevin O'Connell system. So, all right, 1 p.m. We got the Eagles at the Saints.
Saints.
I'll go Saints as well. All right, we have another undefeated matchup here. Chargers at Steelers.
Chargers.
I'm going to go Steelers. All right, we have the Broncos at the Buccaneers.
Bucks.
Yeah, Bucks. Do we even need to ask this one? Panthers at Raiders. The poor Panthers. Raiders. Man. By the way, does Andy Dalton give them any better of a shot than Bryce Young? Because I don't think he does at all.
I do. Give me the Panthers.
Ooh, I'm going to be the only one here.
So it was worth asking.
It was worth asking, yes. It was, because I'm the only one going with the Raiders. The Panthers look like an 0-17 team to me. Frankly, I just don't think Andy Dalton is going to bring that much more. But I mean, Bryce Young is that bad potentially. So, yeah. Will Bryce Young ever get another chance as a starter in this league, or is it over for him?
Oh yeah. Look, he's a product of the team being bad. I view him in kind of the same vein as I viewed Sam Darnold. And look, I've been a believer in Sam Darnold, and he's finally showing why right now. He's not great necessarily, but he's been pretty good. But you'd have never thought he would be doing that when he was playing for the Jets.
Right. And like kind of what we're seeing with Geno Smith in the next game with Seattle.
Same.
With Seattle. They're hosting Miami. Who we have here?
Seattle.
I'll go Seattle as well. All right. The surprisingly 0-2 Baltimore Ravens at the 1-1 Dallas Cowboys.
Baltimore.
Dallas.
I'm going to go Baltimore. They're not. Lamar's not letting them start 0-3. I will say that Lamar Derrick Henry combo is not working because they're just two fundamentally different styles. So, which is interesting to me. All right. 49ers at the Rams. But you can call this the IR Bowl because everyone's hurt.
49ers.
Rams. Again, Kyle Shanahan's kryptonite is Sean McVay.
Yeah, but Sean McVay's team is injured to heck right now completely. And the 49ers are too, but I think the Niners are still in a little bit better position right now. All right. This could be the most entertaining game of the week right here. Lions at Cardinals.
Lions.
And I think Jared Goff also gets benched in the next couple weeks.
Great, please. If Hendon Hooker starts for the Detroit, that might be enough to get me off to being a Titans fan, and I'll become a Lions fan temporarily. until the Titans fix their quarterback situation. But give me the Cardinals. I'll just be like one of those Vol fans that were a Colts fan for the Peyton Manning era, but or then they became Broncos fans. So what the things we do in the South is nuts.
Your mental
Sunday-
gymnastics.
Yeah, the mental gymnastics. All right, the Sunday night game, we got the Chiefs at the Falcons.
Falcons.
Chiefs.
I'm gonna go Falcons. In this.
Chiefs.
I'm trusting prime time. I can't believe I'm picking Cousins at prime time, but here we are. Probably a mistake. All right, we got 2 Monday night games this upcoming week. We got Jaguars at the Bills.
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 Yeah, Bills. And then we got the Washington Commanders at the Cincinnati Bengals.
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 Bengals. And I will say, Jaden Daniels has been pretty good for 2 weeks. Probably the best rookie quarterback so far. All right. Some other brief American topics real quick. Of course, Major League Baseball, as I mentioned at the top of the show, in the playoff push, and things are going from bad to worse for the Atlanta Braves. They are now 2 games behind for the wild card spot. They lost tonight 6-5 to the Cincinnati Reds. And the Mets won tonight. It's looking like it's about to be curtains for Atlanta here. They're falling apart. They got absolutely blasted by the Los Angeles Dodgers over the weekend. The injuries have caught up. It just is what it is this year for Atlanta.
And my Mets, I feel it. It's like 2016. We are getting there. And I guess Jason, he left the pod because he definitely doesn't want to talk about his Chicago White Sox.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's watched. I think it said he's watched 1 game all year, which I don't blame him for one bit. But as I said, though, it doesn't appear like I'm going to see many more Braves games here. And to be fair, I'm kind of ready for the Braves season to be over because the second half has not been fun with all the injuries. And the team is not rolling. And if they made the playoffs, it'd be a very quick exit. So it's kind of the anti-2021. Remember, 2021, they had all momentum heading into the playoffs and were able to parlay that into a World Series victory. The complete opposite here. And it feels like the Braves have some retooling to do before they go back and make some more championship runs. But if you look at over the American League real quick, the Orioles and the Royals are still in a prime position, although the Detroit Tigers are 6 games above 500 and are very much in the running for the wild card.
Yeah, it's gonna be a really interesting wild card. Dispute. Like the Mets are in second place right now in the wild card. They surpassed the Diamondbacks, so things are very looking promising. But the Padres, they have right now the best streak in Major League Baseball, 4 consecutive wins. So it doesn't look like they're gonna be stopped.
Yeah, and Los Angeles is just holding on for the NL West there. Of course, the Phillies right now have the number 1 seed in the NL, and if we're going to have a really good battle for the number 1 seed in the AL too, between the Yankees and the Cleveland Guardians. So, and also don't miss out on the Houston Astros. And remember, the Astros were awful at the beginning of the year, but right now they're on their way to winning the AL West and being right back in it. So, wouldn't it be hilarious that the Astros won it after how bad they started this year?
Yeah, that would be kind of like the Braves, 2021 Braves.
Exactly. So you never know what's going to happen when it comes to the MLB. All right. Quick WNBA news. Angel Reese is officially out for the year with an injury. And Caitlin Clark is breaking all kinds of records. She's 100% going to be Rookie of the Year, and they're gearing up here for the playoffs. And I believe it's this weekend they start the playoffs. Also, Aja Wilson broke the all-time scoring record for, I believe it's the Aces she's on. So, shout out to her. Lots of probably the WNBA is as talented as it's ever been this year, and you have to wonder what how big these playoffs are going to be.
Oh yeah, it's going to be huge. I think definitely it's going to be an interesting battle for the title.
Absolutely. And right now, the Indiana Fever are projected to be the number 6 seed, and they would play the number 3 seeded Connecticut Sun in the first round. So that's going to be super interesting. And that starts this Sunday. This Sunday will be the first round of the playoffs. All right. Real quick, NASCAR. Chris Buescher won at Watkins Glen. Very entertaining road course race. Had to outlast Shane Van Gisbergen. The guys go to Bristol this Saturday here in East Tennessee for the final round of the first round, or the final race of the first round of the playoffs. 4 drivers will get eliminated. Perhaps the driver in most trouble right now is Denny Hamlin. He may have to win it to stay in, which is something that I was not expecting him to be in. But once again, Denny Hamlin has no championships. Something bad always seems to happen to him. He needs to have a really good race, or else his season might be over. And that's all I really have for American sports. What's been going on down in Brazil?
No, and brief mention about auto racing. Nashville hosted their
IndyCar final.
Yeah, and Nashville area resident Herda outtracked O'Hard for the victory. So really good race.
Yeah. And Alex Palou, that was the final race of the year, and Alex Palou won the championship. So congratulations to Palou. Beat out Colton Herta by about 29 points to get the championship. And because IndyCar, unlike NASCAR, still does a full season championship, which is the way it should be done, and not this convoluted playoff format nonsense that NASCAR does. Which is why I love NASCAR, but I don't take the playoffs seriously because it's just like it's dumb. Like you can't put playoffs in a sport. But right now, the 4 drivers that be eliminated right now are Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, Martin Truex Jr., and Harrison Burton. But Hamlin, Keselowski, and Truex are all really good at Bristol. So it's going to be a fascinating race on Saturday. Granted, I'm going to be glued to Tennessee, Oklahoma, so I don't know how much of this race I'm actually going to even see. But, and also, too, I must have to say this by NASCAR. Why are they scheduling the race at Bristol in East Tennessee to go up against one of the biggest Tennessee football games of the year? Like, how many more people could they get to the racetrack if they weren't competing against the Vols? Like, this is dumb. They did this last year, remember? They played Florida. They raced the same day that we played Florida. Like, it makes no sense. This race does not need to be in college football season.
Yeah, it should have been earlier, I think.
Yeah. And it traditionally was in August.
But that's true.
So I don't know why they're doing this. Like, the Bristol night race needs to be its own night. Don't compete against the Vols. But anyway, that's all I have for American sports. What's going on in Brazil?
So I guess we had a very good debate about American sports that I forgot to mention. Corinthians won tonight 2-0 on the road against Fortaleza. Best Corinthians game all season. It could have been 3, 4, 5-0 easily on the road against one of the top teams in the Brazilian Championship. Impressive performance. But I was joking to a friend, like, Corinthians in Sul-Americana and Brazilian Cup, a tiger. But in Brazilian Championship, a little cat. So the Corinthians Cup version needs to go to the Brazilian Championship. The Corinthians Cup version needs to be on the Corinthians Championship. That's the mentality. because Corinthians on Saturday lost to Botafogo on the road, which had a terrible first half. So, I don't. Corinthians is bipolar. On the Cups, played great. On the Brazilian Championship, terribly. And I don't think Corinthians fans will celebrate a cup win if they go to the second division. It will be like Palmeiras 2012. Like, what's the point of winning a cup when you go to the second division? But also Corinthians on Saturday, fans are excited for the debut of Memphis Depay. So also the Dutch player, very anticipated debut is going to be on Saturday against Atlético Goianiense at the bottom of the league. So Corinthians has to win this game to at least keep the fight in the against relegation. Tomorrow, the Libertadores quarterfinal starts. The big matchup for me is Botafogo Sao Paulo. Of course, Botafogo is the favorite, but Sao Paulo has more tradition in the Libertadores, won 3 times. Botafogo never won. So I wonder if tradition is going to be how much the current moment of Botafogo is going to count against a very traditional São Paulo team, which is not playing well. I mean, they were eliminated in the Brazilian Cup last week. So definitely anticipated matchup. And last but not least, Palmeiras won 5-0 against Criciúma in the second spot, 4th consecutive win. And I guess the story repeats again, like in 2022, like in 2023, when Palmeiras is out of the Cups and solely focused in the Brazilian Championship, this team is a steamroll. And if Botafogo keeps, keep going in the Libertadores, I don't know if they have the roster to go against Palmeiras fully rested. So looks like Palmeiras is going to win a three-peat in the Brazilian Championship. Looks like it. It's going to be an interesting battle. And I haven't talked much in the last couple of weeks, but Santos is doing well-ish in the second division. They won last weekend against América Mineiro, a very, very heated game. They're in second place right now. The first place in the second division in Brazil is Novo Horizontino, a city, I'm not kidding, has a population of 38,000 people. So a city of 38,000 people has a really good chance of going to the first division in Brazil. It's mind blowing. Like
I mean,
the
that's
stadium,
like Leicester City stuff.
but Leicester City. I wonder. So their population is 357,000. So they are a considerable size of a city. Novo Horizontino City is 38,000. It's a very small town in the countryside of the Brazil. And also, third place Mirassol as well has a population of 60,000. So there's 2 teams in the state of São Paulo in second division, Brazilian Championship second division, which their combined populations is 100,000 people. So the population of both those cities could not fill Neyland Stadium. Think about that
That's
for a second.
nuts.
And they might go play in the first division. They have a really good chance in play against Flamengo, Fluminense, all the big teams like São Paulo, Corinthians. Like, and I feel kind of jealous because Americana, I wish they had a team like that. Hopefully, Rio Branco gets to the point where, we fight to go to the first division nationally. Maybe one day.
So I'm reading up on this team, and so they've only been around since 2010.
No, they were refounded. Novo Horizontino, they were very good in the 90s. They had they were refounded, kind of like the city had a good team. They were the runner-ups in the Paulista State Championship in 1990. but they got their team got bankrupted, and they refounded with another team with another name, but the same colors, same stadium. And then when they had this new kind of the reborn, then they really got really good in the mid 2010s. They got, I think, 3 consecutive promotions state-wise, and they are they this new foundation. And Mirassol is even interesting because they're really close to a city called São José do Rio Preto, which is a very traditional city. They had 2 really good teams in the past that are both struggling. One of them is almost bankrupt. So it's really interesting to see those kind of small towns teams fighting and have a good chance to be in the first division in Brazil. That's really impressive. But that's all that I have for Brazilian sports.
Absolutely. I'll be curious if they can finish it off and make it into the top league. And if they could do it, I don't see any reason Rio Branco couldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good inspiration.
Absolutely. Something to look up to. But in any case, nearly 3 hours later.
Wow.
That's all the time we have.
Season.
Yep, especially when you have a game to the magnitude of Tennessee and Oklahoma. Shout out to Jason Warwick for joining us through the football sections of this podcast, which was 90% of it. It's going to be a big one. Next week's going to be either a victory party or a very sad party. So hopefully it's a victory party here for Tennessee, Oklahoma, for Gustavo Tomazeli down in Americana, South Carolina, Brazil. I'm Nick Hill in Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States. This is the only American and Brazilian sports podcast. 2 countries, 2 Americas, all sports. Have a great night.